Good to go. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome councillors, welcome to the ELT, welcome to everyone that's supporting us today for our regional meetings that the Central Highlands Regional Council has in a number of locations. Annually, whilst we meet generally in Emerald, we have our regional meetings in Springsure, Capella and Blackwater, and in May usually each year it's in this beautiful place here. So welcome to Blackwater. I guess the location here will be evident to our live streamers that this is the Blackwater Community Civic Centre in the middle of Blaine Street, I guess in the centre of Blackwater, where our meeting will come from today. Now there's a whole heap of activities that we're going to get through today, hopefully. Our meeting will run through to lunchtime. Councillors and certainly our ELT and our team will go to Blackwater Country Club then for our lunch. So we've been doing some interesting work down there with that club and certainly the golf club down there in the last few years. So it's appropriate that we go down to that space for our lunch. Now this evening there's a community consultation here, as always the custom and usual process of events here. So at 5 tonight. So if anyone live streaming was wondering about what time they need to be down here, it's 5 in the foyer here. And obviously our councillors and some of our team will be here for that community consultation, and all are welcome to that. Now in terms of just process today, our live streamers should be getting good clarity and sound. We'll remind all of our speakers today to turn their microphones on. It won't resonate in this room, it won't be an audible conversation in this room, so we will try to speak quite loudly and bearing in mind we'll have some sympathy for streamers, but behind that camera there is a couple of technicians that'll try and adjust that sound to make sure that the comfort of your coverage today will be at the right volume. So I think we can nearly get on with our meeting, but certainly it's great to be in Blackwater. You just cannot help notice how green the Central Highlands is at the moment and how quickly it can change. And it was just an absolute spectacle to be able to drive in here today, looking over those beautiful ranges at the back of Blackwater and this magnificent green country. See this community very, very busy this morning as we drove in. So it's great to be here. Now, councillors, we have most of us present today. We have a couple of apologies we've got to note. We might do these in a couple of sequences. The first one was a leave of absence that was sought by Councillor Curtis for today's meeting, the 25th of May. And she was granted that leave of absence, so she's an apology today. Would someone move that, please? Move Councillor Curtis's apology. Moved by Councillor Carpenter and seconded by Councillor Brimblecombe. All in favour? Against? Thank you. And unavoidably, Councillor Daniels, her family have been very ill, like lots of families all over the Central Highlands recently. It seems to strike us down pretty quickly. So unfortunately, at very short notice, Councillor Daniels couldn't be here, so she's an apology today. So would someone move her apology, please? Thank you, Councillor Cypher, and seconded by Councillor Carpenter. So that's an apology for Councillor Daniels. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Councillors carried. At the start of our meetings and in this place here, and I acknowledge that in the coming weeks here and certainly across the Central Highlands, obviously Reconciliation Week is, and I'm very, very proud to say our council is a very, very strong supporter and participant in all of those events. Blackwater region particularly is very, very strong in some community events that will be held here. In fact, there's actually a walk on country on the Blackdown tableland here incorporated into some of our activities. So at this time and in this place, we acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet here today, the Gangaloo people, and we pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. So we thank them for that and look very much forward to our participation, councillors and others in our team, certainly in events that are going to happen this in the next little while here.
Excuse me, we just need to see if there's any further leave of absence for future meetings.
We will, okay. So councillors, just on the leave of absence, is there any further leaves of absence required from councillors present? And look, I haven't recorded an apology for Councillor Burns because he is on his way, I believe, and we'll check in with him in a while. Everyone okay? We might just have to run through that again when Councillor Burns gets here if that's required. So thank you, everyone. We get to our agenda. Councillors, and obviously the confirmation of minutes of our previous meeting, which was the General Council meeting from the 11th of May. Was someone present there like to move those, please? Moved by Councillor Brimblecombe, seconded. Councillor Carpenter. And as usual, folks, can you just through those? Make sure that they're an accurate record, please.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, can you confirm who moved? I got the second.
Sorry, moved by Councillor Brimblecombe, seconded Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you.
Nothing in there, councillors, that's out of order. We've got some of our first meetings for our Regional Council Gemfields planning study coming up soon. And of course today, I was just talking about it earlier there was that reconfiguration of lot, certainly in relation to the golf course and the surrounds there. All right, councillors, are you happy with those? They've been moved and seconded. All in favour? Against? Thank you, councillors. Carried. Business arising out of those minutes. Any questions? I think once again, councillors, that very, very quickly you can see there's that amended community consultation schedule in there, including some changed times. That's why I was very keen to make sure that people knew 5 o'clock this afternoon. We have changed a couple in there. Everyone happy with those? Upcoming agenda items. Now, councillors, we run through that, I guess, at in a couple of spots. So you know that process, and obviously if you do need to have something added to that or considered for an agenda item, then obviously there's a process that we can tap in. Conflicts of interest?
Yes, Mayor, I need to declare an actual conflict of interest in relation to item 12.2.4, the Central Highlands Development Corporation funding for endorsement item. As Board Director on the Central Highlands Development Corporation, as well as Central Highlands Regional Council CEO, I need to be out of the room for that consideration of the budget. The funding request.
Yep. And probably just to elaborate that for councillors, the Development Corporation and Council have always sought, I suppose, almost conjunctive legal advice just on that conflict. Councillor representatives on the CHDC board, myself, Councillor Rolfe and Councillor Daniels, we have, I guess, you might explain it better, CEO. Yeah.
Sure, thanks, Mayor. So under the Local Government Act, the councillor or the... Oh, sorry. Under the Local Government Act, the councillor representatives as board directors on the Central Highlands Development Corporation are not considered to have a conflict of interest that's specifically covered under the Local Government Act. That doesn't apply to non-elected members like myself. So we are in the process of gaining some legal advice in relation to how to manage that conflict of interest as CEO in council meetings, and also how to manage that conflict of interest as a board director in CHDC meetings. That's just draft advice at the moment. However, quite specifically in relation to when budget is considered or budget requests, funding request is considered, the best way to manage that conflict of interest is to be out of the decision-making room. And so that because we have that item coming to Council for decision today, I'll hand over to General Manager of Corporate Services, Margaret Gatt, to handle that item, and I'll leave the room.
All right. Any questions on that, councillors? All right. It's been a lot of advice that's been sought at different times, and obviously the management of that has been something that we're very mindful of, particularly with related entities. So I guess we want to make sure that's absolutely correct. All right, any other conflicts? And as I say, councillors, if there is a spot, and welcome Councillor Burns too, if there is any conversation that goes in a direction that you're not comfortable with, we'll certainly make your concerns known at the time and we can record them at that point. All right, there are no petitions tabled?
No, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So, councillors, we get to our decision action reports, and for those officers that may not have been here for the earlier lecture, our microphones are for the benefit of our live streamers, so we're providing some clarity. That's broadcasting to the world. It's not, so for the benefit
to be in Blackwater today, and I look forward to what we've got planned. Today, though, is a really important agenda item. Of those issues in Queensland local government terms, it is some of the sleeping giant issues, and the work that's gone in this, I'm very proud of the team. Where it needs to be noted that this is a draft position at this point in time that will go out to a heavy public consultation period, and that is really important. I'll let Kirsten go through a bit more detail on what that looks like, but certainly happy to take questions today and any direction from Council. But without further ado, I'll hand over to Kirsten and to talk through the report. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the purpose of this report is to seek Council's endorsement to progress the draft resource recovery waste management strategy to community consultation. So fundamental.
And speak very loudly.
No
Thank you,
problem.
Kirsten. Yep.
So the fundamental goal within this 10-year strategy is to maintain and improve Council's current level of service while simultaneously improving the efficiency of Council's resource recovery operation and minimising waste disposal to landfills across the region. As John mentioned, this has been a long time coming, and we've engaged consultants Bellis and Rotano who are to help us develop this strategy, and it's been workshopped extensively with Council over the years. The draft strategy, once finally endorsed after the consultation period, would replace the current waste reduction and recycling plan, which is Council's current 10-year document from 2016 to 2026. So this draft strategy has undertaken a number of different workshops with councils and has been updated since the last strategy session earlier this month. It is noted that there have been a couple of updates to the draft PR plan since the agenda closed last week, just to add some additional dates following the Bahinia CRG meeting last week, and just makes to demonstrate that the not yet commenced aspects within the PR plan are very much in draft, ready to be released should we get a resolution today. So the crux of the strategy today centres around 11 strategic goals and objectives which require the investigation of a number of matters. As John mentioned, this is a draft strategy, so we're seeking Council's resolution today to take it to the community for consultation over the next 2-week period. The draft action plan steps out the resources and stakeholders required, the actions, the responsible officer, and then the expected completion date for each of those strategic goals.
Thanks, Mark.
So in terms of the goals, they range from just data integrity goals, which are 9 and 10, and then the investigation into the expansion of curbside collection to look at how we're offering a service to our community and expanding on the current network for curbside collection throughout the region. It also looks at the development of a major resource recovery centre in Blackwater. So we currently have the existing Blackwater landfill and resource recovery area together, and also a new residuals disposal facility being the Regional Resource Recovery Centre, which would be based in Emerald based on site feasibility that's been undertaken over the past 18 months. This would be a co-located facility, proposed to be a co-located facility so that we could maximise on economical efficiencies with waste generation and the cost of sorting and processing, and then landfilling what components cannot be recovered from the resource recovery process. And then it also, the other goals within the strategy looks at improving waste services, so the types of bins, the size of bins, the type of waste generated at each of our facilities, and then also the investigation into a number of different facilities such as Springshire potentially accepting commercial waste. So with the draft PR plan, we're targeting the community through community reference groups, drop-ins at our current facilities, drop-ins at town halls, have your say on the internet, Facebook advertisement, media releases, and a presence at the upcoming shows that we've got. So it'll be a 2-week roadshow where we'll be discussing the draft strategy across the community. So I'm happy to take any questions that councillors may have.
All right, thanks, Kirsten, and I thank you for, obviously, we had a very good, robust discussion about this strategy at our previous strategic and briefing forum, and I think councillors that had concerns have had the opportunity now of having a discussion and some input into that, and that is a useful, obviously, addendum to taking this forward. I think, obviously, the important thing to remember, though, is this is very much a strategy that's going out to be actually consulted with stakeholders. It's going to be something that will change. I'm absolutely confident of that. But obviously, we start now with some really, really strong structure to be able to go to those communities. And that just doesn't start probably now, but is a reflection of the work that you've been doing for the last, I'm going to say, 2.5, 3 years. That obviously gets to a point where we have at least a strategy that's a coherent document to be able to go to a community to actually start the conversation. So hopefully now our council has had the opportunity of having those inputs. So there's communities and councillors that have strong relationships that want those, I suppose, those views exercised here. So, and that will shortcut, I guess, our opportunity to make sure that this becomes a meaningful document to our communities. And we have worked, now for good or bad, we have worked really, really hard with our communities to get this right. We've been prepared to be flexible, and obviously I think this is a really, really good document to be able to take to them. So thank you very much for your work. Councillor Rolfe, you have a comment.
Thank you. Yes, I do have a comment, Mayor, but not so much a question, Kirsten, but just a comment about the number of, in the southern part of the Highlands region, the number of large events that have been going on over, that go on every 12 months. So, and it's been raised with me a couple of times now about the cost of actually moving waste to Blackwater or Lockleys. So just to, I suppose, give you a heads up that will be one of the real items that will come out of these negotiations in community consults. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rolfe. Councillor Cypher.
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much for including Bahinia in your visits, your little drop-in visits. What I really want to raise, and I know it's all to do with time and all of that, but 2 weeks for community is not sufficient, in my opinion. And I do like the idea that you have put down that you're going to be at the resource recovery centres. I do like that. But I also find that in a community that isn't sufficient. I think you do need to have somewhere, and Capella has a CRG in this tight time frame. I really think you need to visit the CRG as well. I couldn't see where you were having a visit to the Capella CRG. I mean, I personally don't go to the dump. My husband might, but my husband wouldn't be inclined to want to give feedback. And there'd be a lot of people like that have a lot to say but wouldn't like to say it while they're throwing their rubbish out. Yet I think it is a good place to try and catch some people, but I just think you need to have a bit longer community consultation period. And I know that's not easy. I get that. I know, I understand. If possible,
council with strategies and plans, etc. But I would like to ask, has the draft resource recovery in brackets waste management strategy 2022-2032 has the waste reduction and recycling plan now incorporated, or is this all linking through?
Through you, Mr Mayor, it's a great question, Councillor Moriarty. So the Waste Reduction and Recycling Plan, or WRRP freeze, was established back in 2015-2016 and then amended in 2019. So some 3 years has elapsed. We've then had the introduction of the Queensland Waste Levy. The WRRP does have the same sort of principles in terms of the consolidation of facilities. However, as we found with the WRRP, there was a consolidation of facilities without necessarily looking to expand the service network. So closing facilities before offering an alternative to people. So a number of the principles from the WRRP have been reflected in the draft strategy. In terms of the time frame, obviously that's in place until 2026. There are a number of things which we haven't done in accordance with the WRRP, like the closure of the Bluff facility should have been done by 2022 and a number of other facilities. So that schedule for closures was put on hold whilst we looked at how we could deliver a more efficient waste service across the region, in terms of, it might be consolidating facilities, but it's also about giving a better service and a more convenient service through investigations to the community before we do actually close. So there is a blend of the WRRP into the waste strategy, but there's new data, new policies and new legislations from a Queensland perspective reflected in the draft strategy.
Thank you very much. And can I also ask, is the recycling plan or the resource recovery waste management strategy?
It is a legislative requirement for councils in Queensland.
Okay. Sorry, so which date is the legislation, was it legislated? The 2016 or the 2022?
I believe it's in the Waste Recycling Act, but I can take that on notice and just confirm, but it's definitely
Okay.
a requirement.
No, I just wanted to know whether it was something optional for council we're legislated to do. I know that they're probably obvious that it would be legislated given the whole range of requirements on local governments to be much more efficient, effective and cost effective with their waste and measure and report and whatever it all is. So obviously, so thank you for that. The other thing I would like to point out in our council documents, on page 25, I noted the timing for the community consultation resource recovery strategy was to start on Thursday, the 20th. Concur with Councillor Rolfe. I have certainly heard from a lot of people about the extra expense, particularly business people, of having to travel to one or two places to transfer their rubbish and waste, and also like to just pick up as there's a few ways you can engage or let people know broadly that, and do a big media campaign and have some ways of getting people to know that the feedback period is on. And also there's a lot of they come to you, which sadly you're talking about closing the Bluff transfer station. It's you come to us, we'll pick the time, we'll pick the date, and a very short window. So what my point here is that you've got a 10-year plan, and I think we've had some conversations around this before. There are, obviously, as you stated, there are quite a few reasons why this strategy, a few things being incorporated into this strategy. However, I think that there could be a lot more talking to the community to inform your community engagement. I think we've spoken about this before. And to be honest, I was like, my eyes nearly popped out of my head when I did see that it was starting, I think, on Friday.
It's tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay, good. So tomorrow's the 26th. Right. But good on you for doing your PR plan. I really think that that's fantastic. But I think there still needs to be a little bit more depth and thought around the community consultation, such as extending it. And I think for a 10-year plan, even for a four or whatever corporate plan is, 5-year plan, I think it's usually a month consultation. And given that this is, council is about roads, rates, rubbish, it's not a topic that's, as we've all found out, it's not a topic that the community don't want to be engaged in. And we've already seen petitions come through, some mediation to work with communities. From my perspective, I think that you're on the right track, but I would like to see the consultation, some twigs to that. I think it could also be informed based on experiences that you've had in the past as well. But I've raised that before, but I would like to concur with Councillor Rolfe and Councillor Cypher that the time needs to be extended, and I still have issues with particular community like Bluff, where you're saying you're going to close their transfer station. I mean, there's not even proper focus. Anyway, I've said my piece, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moriarty.
Thanks, Councillor Moriarty. Councillor Brimblecombe?
Just a question on, as in communications, are you utilising school newsletters as well as like your Capella newsletter for the town, the Bohemia, so those mediums to get the message out as well as Blackwater?
Yep. Through you, Mr Mayor, Councillor Brimacombe, great suggestion. We can certainly add them to the draft PR plan just to get the message out further. What was developed in the PR plan was what was assumed would capture the best audience in terms of promoting the dates and places that we will be visiting, but we can certainly increase that to include the Bohemia Bulletin and the likes of other school newsletters that the community engagement
Just to
team
get the message out a bit easier.
Yep.
So.
And if I might, great points, Councillor Moriarty, and I just want to clarify the comment about the closure of Bluff. It's about the investigation into the closure of Bluff. So we're not closing anything until we've undertaken a proper investigation into the closure of facilities. And with each of the strategic goals, a number of them will require their own individual PR plan, because we know communities are different, whether you're in Capella or Bohemia or Bluff. It's a different investigation piece into that investigation into expanding the curbside collection area and then what that might look like. So if it is a closure of the facilities is the likely outcome at the end, well then we've got to work out what that looks like specific to that community and what might be required for them as well.
Sorry, John. Yeah, go.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, there's just two things I wanted to cover off there, just for completeness. Councillor Moriarty, very happy to extend that consultation period. Can I just confirm, did you have a preference on the period? Was it 4 weeks?
Well, sorry, through the Mayor.
And Councillor Cypher, sorry, as well, I think.
I'm happy with 3 weeks.
Okay.
I think it should be longer.
We'll take that into consideration and take that on board. And I suppose the other bit there, just to confirm, the current waste reduction recycling plant, yes, in all fairness, will be superseded, I suppose, by this process. So there will no longer be 2 documents, or there wouldn't be 2 documents. So this would be our principal policy strategic document to drive this for the next 10 years. That other one would be superseded. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Through the Mayor, thank you very much for that clarification. And I'm certainly glad some words are recorded for future reference as well. Thank you.
No worries, thank you.
Yep. All right, thank you. Well, thank you, councillors. Thank you, Kirsten. The resolution there has a couple of parts, as you can see. So the recommendation today is we endorse the draft resource recovery in brackets waste management strategy 2022 to 2032 to go out to between Thursday the 26th of May and the 10th of June. Have you got an amendment here, Kirsten, or is that okay? Right, there is. So we're going to use that board, and I'm going to have to read that out for Councillor Cypher, who can't see it over there. The second part is endorses the draft public, is that, so this is the correct one on the board?
I've just highlighted.
Yeah, highlighted the date there, the 24 June, so that's actually recording the extended, I guess you'd say, consultation period?
That's for 4 weeks.
Yes. And I guess the reality is, whilst this will be an endorsement, there's no reason why there's not some flexibility if there was some community response to that. The second part is endorses the draft public relations plan for the draft resource recovery, in brackets, waste management strategy 2022-2032. And 3, notes the draft resource recovery, waste management, in brackets, action plan 2022-2032, which aligns with the strategic goals of the draft resource recovery, waste management, in brackets.
Consultation has changed. So with because in the draft public relations plan, it's got the 2-week timeframe.
Yep.
So that would need to be amended in the draft.
Okay, so endorses the draft public relations plan with amendments.
Yes.
To consultation period
And methods.
and methods.
Oh, sorry, just very quickly, because it's legislated to have that document, quite often the state government has best practice, timeframes, etc. for community engagement. I just thought I'd throw that.
All right.
With amendments
So there's
to consultation
that
period
reference then
and
in part
methods.
2 refers to obviously the change made in part 1. So amendments to the extended community consultation for 4 weeks and methods time frame
Methods of consultation.
of consultation. I'll just stop reading, and when these people stop typing, yeah, that's good. All right. Okay. Now, for everyone there, you've read those. So this will be this won't be what's in your agenda, but this is the actual resolution you're recording today. Is someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Rolfe, seconded Councillor Burns. So it's been moved and seconded. All in favour? Against? Councillor, do you want your vote recorded? Thank you, Councillor Moriarty. Thank you. All right, well, thank you. Carried. Thank you, officers. Thank you, everyone, for that, obviously. I never should say the end of anything because it's only the start of the next session. So thank you very much for that hard work. I know Vince Rattana will be very, very happy to obviously see that resolved by Council today. All right, Councillors, next agenda item is in relation to the endorsement of the temporary local planning instrument.
Instrument, thank you, Kirsten.
Thank you, John. Through you, Mr Mayor. So the purpose of this report is to request a resolution from Council today to make a proposed temporary local planning instrument, or TLPI for short, for operational work including vegetation clearing in the Carnarvon Gorge area in accordance with the Planning Act 2016. A TLPI for operational work involving vegetation clearing within the Carnarvon Gorge area on these specific lots as listed in the report, which is considered the is proposed for the purpose of ensuring this area is subject to an appropriate level of assessment for vegetation clearing. I apologise. So within this area, it covers approximately 413 hectares of Category B regulated vegetation, 390 hectares of essential habitat, and at least 2 endangered or vulnerable species. So essentially, the TLPI is in place, proposed to be in place to provide the protection and maintenance of areas supporting biological diversity, ecological integrity, scenic amenity, and landscape character, as the current planning scheme drafting does not trigger operational works for vegetation clearing. We've received legal advice regarding this and also liaised with the state government in relation to this proposed TLPI, and they're generally happy with it, subject to a couple of additional information pieces that we need to provide in the justification documentation that goes along with the TLPI. So currently, with the drafting of the planning scheme, the scheme does not trigger an operational works for vegetation clearing, a trigger that is commonly utilised by councils to mitigate impacts on biodiversity. As such, environmental matters are only considered as part of a material change of use or reconfiguring a lot development application. Without the operational works trigger, an individual could clear vegetation for an urban purpose in an urban zone without the need for an application to be submitted to Council for operational works. We have spoken to Council about this, and we did add an additional parcel which is just covering the Telstra allotment. It's a small part of the parcel which was within the subject area, but unfortunately missed on the initial maps when we talked to Council about this previously. So the recommendation today is to make a TLPI for operational works involving vegetation clearing in the Carnarvon Gorge area, requesting Minister's agreement that the temporary local planning instrument will be effective from 25th of May 2022 as the date that Council may resolve to give the TLPI instrument to the Minister, and then authorise the Chief Executive Officer to complete all required actions in accordance with Part 3, Section 23 of the Planning Act and Chapter 3, Part 2 of the Minister's Guidelines and Rules, and then repeal the temporary local planning instrument upon commencement of proposed planning scheme amendment, business improvement and innovation, which will absorb the changes proposed within the TLPI. It's just a timing thing. So happy to take any questions.
Councillor Brimblecombe.
Just a question. I know at Blackdown Tableland we have a communication tower there for UHF. Does that cover that area as well, or?
Through you, Mr Mayor, no, this is just those subject area parcels within the Carnarvon Gorge precinct, not Blackdown.
Okay, I'm just wondering whether it needs to cover those sort of areas which are within our council area, but there may be a need to clear around those communication towers.
Oh. In terms of clearing, sorry, through you, Mr Mayor, clearing around areas, there are provisions that you can do some clearing for bushfire protection or bushfire management around certain areas, but it's more the TLPI is about developing and clearing mass areas.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Kirsten. Councillor Moriarty.
Thank you very much. Just to confirm, I suppose, on page 104, dot point 3. So just to clarify that it's to allow vegetation clearing to occur if the clearing is equal to or less than 100 square metres in total cleared area on the premises. So that's kind of like the areas that we're talking about, with obviously with all of those other requirements around it. So, and I know that there's interest, isn't there, in developing the area up there too, from a tourist perspective as well. So, yeah, thank you.
So I think that was the catalyst actually for this review, was clearly some permissions granted by the state government in respect of that locality and its current, I suppose, level of protection under our current planning scheme. So this is what's triggered this more purposeful control. So I guess at the end of the day, and I think we talked about this when the report came to us about challenging the state government in terms of approach to looking at areas and saying, well, you know, the same, I suppose, level of protection is accorded to that as another place. Well, it's more significant to us. So it's appropriate that I guess it's our temporary planning instrument. And I think that's not necessarily all of it, but that's part of it. So obviously, I think, Charlie, what would be more relevant would be other areas similar to Carnarvon Gorge, and there might be through a period of time a reflection on areas that are likely to actually have an increased tourism presence, particularly around the Central Highlands that have currently at a lower level. And we may have to look at localities that actually aren't specifically referred to in our planning scheme that might have to actually get the same address. So I'm very, very pleased, obviously, that the mechanism of this development application has made our strategic planning or planners consider the right protection for what we think are more of our local values in terms of making sure we keep that space well controlled. So thank you very much for that work. So. Councillors, any other questions? The recommendation is quite long, and obviously,
Excuse me?
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Rolfe. Yeah.
Just going on from Councillor Brimblecombe about Telstra towers and things, in the Carnarvon's area, in the Carnarvon Gorge area, there will be need for additional communication towers. So is that taken into account?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the TLPI only relates to subject area, which is that finite number of parcels. So if a future tower was to be proposed within that area, this would essentially cover it within the subject area, and they would be limited to that restriction around clearing.
Thanks, Councillor Moriarty, too.
Yeah, and thank you. And I just finally I guess this would be, is this setting a precedent? Is this the first time our council's had to do this? It's not. So it's something that you do in a national park anyway, or is it only for national parks that you have to get the temporary local planning?
No, through you, Mr. Mayor. So the temporary local planning instruments are utilised where we identify there might be a gap in a planning scheme. So we've previously introduced TLPIs for renewable areas within irrigated areas, or for operational works applications within a floodplain. So essentially the TLPI forms a band-aid approach until a major scheme amendment, which is already incorporating these changes, can be adopted. So it provides an interim security net for council so that matters of significance can be protected.
All right, thank you, Councillor Moriarty. As I said, councillors, the recommendation there rightfully has the right references and certainly a stepping through process. So I'm not going to read it out in its entirety, and obviously Kirsten has actually alluded to the parts of it, and certainly part 3 in relation to an authority to the CEO to obviously to complete all those required actions, and then obviously the repeal of the temporary local planning instrument upon commencement of the proposed planning scheme amendment for the business improvement and innovation. So there's a number of parts there. I'll trust the land descriptions that probably came from property services and planning, I'm sure.
They've been checked multiple times.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So, councillors, that's the recommendation to move that. Moved by Councillor Cypher, seconded Councillor Brimblecombe. All in favour? Against? Thank you, councillors. Carried. Thank you very much, Kirsten. Councillors, we move along to corporate services, 12.2.1, which is a quarterly policy review for... Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. I was just a little bit confused by the infrastructure and utilities reference point. So.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, I can just introduce the report and then hand over to GM Infrastructure and Utilities.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, councillors. The purpose of this report is to present policies for review and adoption related to the Infrastructure and Utilities Department in accordance with our Central Highlands Regional Council policy review schedule. By way of providing an update, in March, Infrastructure and Utilities met with the Governance Business Unit and councillors to discuss the following policies: the asset disposal policy, the asset management policy, the road dust sealing request management policy, also the water supply, domestic use only for Sapphire and Ruby Vale mining claims and leases policy, the urban and rural addressing policy, and also the water submetering for the community title schemes policy. I'll hand over now to the General Manager, Infrastructure and Utilities, to discuss the small changes, medium changes and any major changes to those policies. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager Gatt, and good morning, councillors. So, as the General Manager mentioned, there's 6 policies under the Infrastructure and Utilities banner which were scheduled for review in this report. 3 of the policies required no change at this point in time, being the asset disposal policy, the asset management policy, and the road dust sealing request management policy. There's 2 minor changes to the water supply, domestic use only for Sapphire and Ruby Vale mining claim, and the urban and rural addressing policy. And there's a major proposed change to the water submetering policy for the community title schemes. So in regard to those changes, the minor changes for the 2 policies being the water supply for Sapphire and Ruby Vale mining claims was a minor rewording of the policy to make it clear on the purpose. and that was defining the areas that were included in the policy. And a one word for the urban and rural addressing policy, there was a word changed, a spelling mistake from changed to changes. With regard to the major change on the water sub-metering policy in the community title scheme, this was discussed in detail at the councillor workshop, and following the workshop, councillors were issued a briefing note on the 14th of April to explain the change in legislation which has led to the change in the policy. So the change in legislation requires council to own all the sub-meters on a strata title type property. The existing policy allowed for the strata title to own the water meters, which isn't reflective of legislation anymore. So that change, removing part 3 or option 3 in the policy has been removed now to align with legislation. As mentioned, these are scheduled reviews which happen annually for each of the departments. There are still some works in progress for the dust seal and some recommendations that councillors have previously raised with regard to improvements on that policy that we are still investigating, but due to the timing of this scheduled review, they weren't included in this. But once those changes have been considered and discussed with council through other workshops, and they'll be brought back to a council meeting for a proper adoption of that policy should it result in any changes. Happy to take any questions.
Councillor Rolfe.
Yeah. So any changes that you make to a policy within a year before a scheduled review can come back to council immediately? Thank you.
Yes, that's correct, councillor. So the policy will be reviewed with the infrastructure team and the governance team, and then there's a process which brings it back to council to adopt under a resolution.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Councillor Moriarty.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Just drawing your attention to the urban and rural addressing policy. I apologise I wasn't part of the review when this was done, but I was really pleased to see that from the rural addressing that dot point 3.2, to ensure uniformity throughout the region, council will provide and install the initial standard number post with the reflective rural address number adhered to both sides of the post. And I'm not sure if I'm allowed to ask this question here, Mr Mayor, but are you rolling that out around the region, or it's just those properties that want to be involved, that they're involved with it? And the reason why I was asking a general manager is just driving, around some other councils, it's clearly signposted where the numbers for the properties. So I know that this is a really big issue, especially for emergency services as well.
Yeah, thank you, councillor. So separate to the policy review, the infrastructure team have been undertaking a review of our access locations and property numbering. This is part of the motherboard signage project. So the signage that has at the start of the road, the distance to each, on rural roads, the distance to each property. So we've undertaken an audit of all rural property accesses. Some of that rural signage, motherboard signage, has been rolled out. If a resident doesn't currently have a number and they request the number, then it's a process where we can go through and install the sign. But we aren't actually going out and physically installing them without being requested to at this stage.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. It's just that at the Bluff community are keen to participate in that program. So I just noted that we can do that under this policy and how to do that. So thank you.
Right, other questions? Sorry, Councillor Cypher, my apologies. Yeah.
Mr Mayor, is it possible that we can separate some policies into a separate motion, please? Because I can't vote for the urban and rural addressing policy. It doesn't go as fair enough for me. And I would like to have that separated out so I can vote against that policy. Thank you.
I see what you mean, yeah.
just to
Councillor's happy to do that? Are you happy to have it separated out? Okay. So,
Just for consistency.
no, just the policy so they're currently grouped up there with it, no changes and the following policy. So just in 2B, the urban and rural addressing policy, if you can actually make it probably just a separate resolution on its own.
Thank you.
So those definitions in the current resolution are only around no changes, some changes, etc. Okay. Right. So I'm just seeking your councillor's advice. I mean, otherwise we'd go through a long procedural, I suppose, approach to that. So if we can take it out, if you're happy to vote on it separately. All right. Any other questions before we go? All good? All right. So councillors, in the first instance, we've got 1, 2 and 3 with the change now in 2. Item 2B is now been removed and actually made into a third resolution. Or is it a separate resolution? All right. So, councillors, in the first one, it's about asset disposal policy, asset management policy and road dust sealing request management policy, which are the policies that have had no proposed changes to them. The second one will be some minor changes to the water supply domestic use only for Sapphire and Rubyvale mining claims and leases policy. And then the third one is the one that Jason had a little bit more information on, which is adopt the following policy, which have major changes around that sub-metering. Which was previously referred to as now a conflict in the Act. So there's one, so those three with that amendment. So someone happy to move those? Moved by Councillor Moriarty, seconded Councillor Brimblecombe. All in favour? Against? Thank you, that's carried. Now the next one reads, adopt the following policy which has a minor proposed change, and that's to the urban and rural addressing policy. So can I have a mover and a seconder for that one? Moved by Councillor Rolls, seconded Councillor Moriarty. So it's been moved and seconded. So I can vote all in favour? Against? Thank you. And record your vote, Councillor Simon? Yeah, no, thank you. No, absolutely, and councillors, thank you for asking to have it taken out, and we have the opportunity of doing it, so thank you. Carried. All right, councillors, I think I'm sticking with our same general managers again in the same order in reference to the operational plan. So, General Manager Margaret, if you'd like to introduce that as well, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good morning, councillors. This report presents the quarterly progress against our Central Highlands Regional Council 21-22 operational plan for the third quarter ending 31st of March. At the end of the third quarter, it's pleasing to note that 75% of the 100 activities that make up our plan are on target or have been completed. An update has been provided by management within the attached performance report in regard to progressing those activities that are below target or being monitored. And the following represents a summary of the status of these activities. As you can see in the table below on page 133 of 233 of the agenda. In terms of just general narrative, as in previous quarterly reports, we do have each of the general managers speak to their various areas within the areas of responsibility. So I'll hand over now to the General Manager of Communities, John McDougall, to take the first narrative. Thanks, John.
Thank you, General Manager Gatz. As always, very proud moment for me every quarter to go through the operational plan, the outcomes for our communities during that period. Just some of the highlights in the report, councillors, around the Have Your Say Central Highlands highlights as well. I won't go into detail with that, they are all in the report. Certainly there was a total of 2,508 visits to the website this quarter. which is a considerable amount of traffic through that process. Interagency network meetings, so we had a number of those representing 25 organisations over that period. As always, the Regional Arts Development Fund, or RADF as we know, round 2 occurred during that period. We saw 3 applications funded to the value of $14,571. I know for a fact that those recipients were extremely happy and delighted with receiving those funds for those particular processes there. The Digital Art Gallery, any of the live streamers, those in the gallery today, was certainly a fantastic gallery exhibition, and looking to develop that further in the future. The Emerald Art Gallery itself, so we've had a number of exhibitions throughout the gallery during that period. On a little bit further, the new library online services. So as always, the library staff are, whether it's a COVID-initiated type process where we had to be very, use our initiative to continue providing our services. They've done it again, and there are some more online services available to our community, and certainly thank those staff for putting those things forward. Ranger services update. There is, a lot of work occurring at the moment around our responsible animal management. It's great to see that we've had considerable numbers of dog registrations continue. We've had some recent tree trimming in Jaringa, proving successful for some flying fox management down there, which is great for that community as well. I know that's been a huge issue, and we'll continue to do that into the future. From a Parks and Recreation perspective, obviously being very busy in that area over that period, residents and councillors, you will notice the majority of the signs have been rolled out, or the new signage has been rolled out in parks and recreation areas across the Central Highlands, and we'll give that consistency and ownership to those park areas. Communities, facilities, a lot of painting and maintenance occurring, so we've got a significant number of assets that sit in the community facilities area, so significant amount of work happening there. One to note is around the Mackendale Function Centre, Capella Cultural Centre, and the ever-charming Bogan Tungan Hall. So those works will continue. We've just about finished our capital works program as well, so come another month we will be at a very good completion rate, certainly over 90% for this year, which is really a considerable effort for the team. From a game plan perspective, it certainly pleases me to say that that work has continued. We are all but about 5, and Councillor Carpenter may be able to give me the exact number there, of organisations that are yet to sign. So we're around about that 100 mark at the moment, and that's a great effort for the team to get those signed, and certainly some great feedback coming from those sport and recreation clubs. From a strategic land use perspective, you will read the comments in there, but some great work occurring, and even here this morning with a temporary local planning instrument, that team continues to put our community first from a planning perspective and provide those mechanisms for development to occur, and do that in an effective and efficient manner as well. The big one though this particular quarter was the public consultation of the draft major planning scheme amendment for the floodplain management. That is a huge portion of work and culminated in that public consultation. You'll see in our report for the current quarter that we're in, we've actually now received that approval, I suppose, from the state government, but a great thing, building resilience within our communities across the Highlands. From a waste and environmental health update, we had Global Recycle Day in March. We had a lot of work occurring there from the environmental health team, moving into the event season. So there were 8 applications received in March for considerable sized community events, and that's about it for me. Thank you, unless there's any questions.
We'll hold them to the end, John, if that's all right.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. From an infrastructure, it was a very successful Q3 for the infrastructure and utilities team. The water utilities team commenced the Springshaw Reservoir water cooling system which should be operational within the next few weeks. We also commenced an upgrade of the Sapphire water treatment plant, which is still ongoing. There's still a heavy focus on some strategic documents within the Water Utilities Department. Councillors will note some of the water security strategies are slightly behind target, and we're still heavily focused on delivering those and are currently out to public consultation with regard to that document. Work from an infrastructure point of view, work commenced on the next section of rehabilitation on Lilyvale Road and the Willies Creek Road project that was jointly funded by Council and the Federal Government through the Roads of Strategic Importance program was completed. From a maintenance perspective, approximately 534 kilometres of rural roads were graded in the quarter. We had the transition of fleet management from the corporate services team to the infrastructure and utilities team department at the start of Q3. And during this period, we've received over $1.5 million worth of plant that had been on order for some time. These included a new hook truck for the Emerald Waste Recovery Centre, a new street sweeper, a new tractor slasher, which will be based here in Blackwater, and a new road train water cart, which will be based in Jeringa. The fleet team were also successful in achieving compliance in accordance with the National Heavy Vehicle Accreditation Scheme audit that's carried out annually. And this relates to Council's management of maintenance records, mass and dimension, and fatigue management. That summarises the Infrastructure and Utilities Department. Thank you, Councillors.
Thanks, Jason. In terms of customers...
I'll do that.
Okay, sorry.
Yep,
General
that's
Manager.
okay. Sorry,
Yep.
Mr Mayor. Councillors, I'll just speak on behalf of Customer and Commercial Services as Michelle as an apology today. So pleasing again, similar to Jason and John's commentary for this department, for the Emerald Airport, for that quarter, 40+ services received each week. And the airport continues to recover post-COVID and is looking forward to welcoming more travellers to the relaunched terminal kiosk in the near future. In regards to Regional Connectivity Program, as part of the Australian Government's Regional Connectivity Program, Council's been working with a company called QCN Fibre to identify suitable locations to connect high-capacity broadband to the towns of Bluff, Dingo and Doringa. The site of Doringa will be located on council land, and the officers are working towards a suitable agreement with QCN Fibre and the principal contractor, Channel Wireless. Property acquisitions. Council is continuing to work with the Blackwater Mine Workers Club on transferring ownership of that facility, and Council is also continuing to work to secure continued use of the raw water of the golf course. During this period as well, there was increased activity at the Nagoa Rise estate in Emerald, with 3 vacant lots sold and another 3 lots under contract. For our sale yards, it was a very healthy 32,367 head of cattle were sold at our sale yards. For the customer service area of Council, 4,750 customer requests were received, and an additional 5,432 calls were received and responded to. And I'll continue on, councillors, through the chair, just a very, very brief high stats for corporate services. 60 leaders across council have attended a leadership development program that was developed in consultation with the Local Government Managers Association and our council. 6 employees have completed their traineeship or apprenticeship, and we've had 2 nominations for the 2022 Queensland Training Awards. And it'll be pleasing that after 2 years of virtual ceremonies due to COVID restrictions, this year's awards are set to return to face-to-face and are expected to be bigger than ever. The regional finals will be actually hosted in Emerald in late July, and Council is in the running with 2 nominations. One being a Supervisor of Parks and Gardens in the category of the Harry
Hornschild.
Pardon?
Harry Hornschild.
Hornschild, sorry if I said that wrong again, Apprentice of the Year for the successful completion of her Certificate 3 in Parks and Gardens. And also CHRC is the category for Large Employer of the Year, which recognises a large organisation that has achieved excellence in the provision of nationally recognised training to its employees. And during this quarter as well, we successfully have rolled over all of Council to Microsoft Teams from our previous platform of Skype. And that has significantly improved the way how we've been able to conduct remote and virtual, not only council meetings, but through recent feedback that I've received, also has provided improvements in CRGs as well for communities not necessarily needing to travel, and also council staff, but people being able to use that functionality. In terms of our financial performance, I'll just briefly, our operating revenue was tracking 1.354 million below the adopted budget, and there are a number of reasons for that. The variances, these are some, to name a few. We had a favourable variance of 247,000 due to unbudgeted sale of developed land. We also had an increase in sale yards activities, which included dipping and feed sales, increased revenue of 84,000. We had an increase at airport activities of 185,000 and an increase for waste refusal disposal fees. For operating expenses, our operating expenditure graph shows that we are tracking 2.987 million above the adopted budget, and some of the variances contributing to that are water utilities, materials and contractor expenditure, higher than budgeted too because of increased maintenance costs. Fleet external plant hire, servicing and repair costs higher than budget due to timing, and external works and roads, street materials and services higher than budgeted due to timing. Our capital budget is on track in a very good way, to the tune of 64.73 million. And our capital revenue, in terms of grants and contributions to the value of 7.466 million, has been received out of a full year budget of 14 million. And I'll finish on that note and open the floor to any questions from councillors to the general managers.
I just wanted to raise with the IT people that there is a microphone, or the internal system is trying to work, is it? Or this one here is certainly having a crack at it, or there's a new paper wasp nest back there, but there's something crackling away back there, so it might be needing to be switched off. It's not interfering, I don't think, with the playlist, but it's it could be something. CEO, you didn't want to add anything to the quarterly report?
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to congratulate the officers and the staff and management of council on their work that quarter. It was particularly a disrupted start to the year for all of us and our community, with COVID impacts after the border reopening, and the staff and management really proved themselves passionate and productive, and maintained productivity during that time, even though there was significant working from home and also significant risk controls implemented to the way our on-the-ground staff have had to work during that time. So just wanted to congratulate the staff and management, and thank staff and management for their ongoing commitment to provide services even during a disrupted period. And also on disruptions, just to acknowledge that we did have staff attend emergency or natural disaster in the southeast from flooding cleanup, which we have recognised in the council chamber. So thanks to the staff.
Yeah. Thank you, Sharon. All right, over to questions. Councillor Moriarty.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Moriarty, you might have to reference, you usually do, but let's reference where they are so we'll follow along with you. Yep. Thank you. Yep,
okie dokie, thank you. I just want to say it's a nice picture of the cows on the front cover, but just very quickly, I did want to say congratulations to everyone for all the hard work, and particularly I noticed the comments that are provided throughout the operational plan. Thank you very much. To me, I thought they seemed a bit more comprehensive than we've previously had. So I just wanted to say thank you for that as well. And I also wanted to say congratulations on all the graphics and colours there for particularly the financial aspects as well. As you know, I think it's 70% of the population's visual, so it's really great that we're able to communicate in a number of ways, not just words and numbers, but also use our colours to help people understand and be able to read things a bit more easily and interpret. I know this is a bit of a silly question before I ask my questions, but I never noticed before, do we only ever pick 100 items? Is that what? Have I read that wrong? In total, there's 100 items?
As in the activities,
As
each
in-
quarter. Yeah.
Councillor Moriarty, yeah, that just happens to be a coincidence that it's
Oh, okay.
100.
No, I was just
Yeah,
wondering.
there's
I thought
no-
it might be a standard.
No, there's, through the chair, no, it's not, there's no method behind that number.
Yeah,
It's
because
just
I thought, oh, that makes it easier to work out percentages.
It does, but
So,
Last
thank
year
you.
we had, through the chair, we had more last year. I think it was 120 odd or
Yeah,
something
that's
like
what
last year.
I thought that. But anyway, yeah, good. Thank you very much. I just wanted to, yeah, as I said, there's all great work in here, and as I keep saying, there's all different ways to have our quarterly report card summarised on what council does, which, you know, obviously you can incorporate more capital projects as well as operational. So I just think it would be good going forward, as everybody knows, I keep saying that, to have a more inclusive report card back to the community of highlighted projects. I guess to the CEO, given your reference to the Central Highlands Development Corporation, when I was going through this morning, again, the operational plan, I did note that on pages, in reference to, it's on page 24 of the operational plan and 158 of the overall operational plan, and the heading 3, supporting our local economy, and 3.1.1 and 3.1.4 and 3.1.4 again and 3.2.1. I noticed it's got responsibility, Chief Executive Officer via Central Highlands Development Corporation. I didn't know whether that needed to be via probably another member of staff, but anyway, given your yeah, I just seen that there, but it might be something you might not want to comment on now, but
Oh, I can comment.
Yeah, thank you.
The operational plan had it as, when adopted, as the Chief Executive Officer's responsibility. That's because we don't have an economic development department as such, but I just thought it was clearer to indicate where the actual work was undertaken by the Central Highlands Development Corporation, so added that into the report card in italics there.
And again, I'd like to thank Council and CHDC for including some items in here in the operational plan as well. So just to be able to promote some of the activities that organisation does. I just did have two questions. The first question is relating to page 29 of the operational plan itself, 163, page 163 of the agenda, and it is under item 4.1.2 under Council's planning scheme, and was development of planning scheme amendment, revocation of Blackwater and Blackwater East priority development areas. I just noted that council have been working very progressively on that. So the progress on this amendment has been placed on hold by the Economic Development Queensland and the Strategic Land Use Team to prioritise other projects. I was just wondering, is there one specific reason? Is it that that's being held up?
Through the chair, EDQ didn't give us what that specific reason is. We've tried a number of times to engage and have them progress this work, but I think with many probably state government departments very busy doing a range of things, so that was the comment that we got back, so we just had to get on and do some other work from our perspective as well. We will continue to push that because we recognise that's an issue that needs to be addressed for the community. We're here in Blackwater today, so
Yep.
Quite poignant. It is fair to say, Councillor Moriarty, that considering where we're at even now, and I know this is reporting on the previous quarter, but that will continue to be a below target. It won't be completed this year.
Yeah, and thank you very much. I know that we're all keenly awaiting some outcomes there, I think, as well.
Agreed.
Yeah, thank you very much. And then my final question is just for clarity. I noticed on page 36 of the operational plan itself, page 170 of the agenda, under item 5.3.1, we've got listed the corporate planning and performance management framework. I noted that in the draft corporate plan, it's referred to as the corporate planning, performance and reporting framework. Can you clarify that those two are the same document?
Yes. I can, and yes, they are. I believe.
Thank you. Obviously, either the corporate plan or this one has to be.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It was anticipated to be called that or something generically like that at the time the operational plan was adopted, but now that the corporate services plan has been drafted, it's got that name on the in the plan itself.
All right, Councillor Rolfe.
Thank you. Just wanted to, at page 161, 3.2.2, and the local buy strategy, and just want to acknowledge council and 17% over their realisation of local spend, which is really good target, hitting the targets and going further. So, good work.
All right, councillors, that is the recommendation is quite simple for obviously a significant piece of information that we received that report. And councillors, we might take this opportunity, and certainly Clinton, if we were going to stop our live streaming for the purposes of morning tea, we might do that now. So, councillors, the recommendation is there that we receive the operational plan Q3 performance report. Is someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Burns, seconded by Councillor Carpenter. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you, councillors. Well, look, we'll adjourn the meeting for a morning tea break, and we might come back here, and given that we're on location, if we can make that 15 minutes. So let's come back at 1:45. Thank you. It's longer than 15 minutes. But
20.
drafty here, isn't it? we concluded the morning session with the adoption of the quarterly operational plan Q3, and our next agenda item would be our monthly financial report, which is 12.2.3. So if we can go to that space, I'll corporate Margaret to lead us through this financial report.
Thank you, Mayor Hayes. Good morning, councillors again. I won't say anything more other than to hand over to our Manager Finance, Vicky, to take us through the monthly finance report. Thanks, Vicky.
Yep. And can I just, in preempting that, Vicky, our arrangements this morning with our audio is that our microphones are only actually providing sound to our streamers today, so it doesn't actually feed through the building. So you can sit about 6 inches back from your microphone and make sure that they can hear well, but obviously you'll have to speak up loudly for the rest of us. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, GM Gatt. Good morning, councillors. Through the Chair, I present the April Finance Report. The purpose of this report is to provide a monthly update on Council's overall financial position in accordance with the local government regulation. It provides a snapshot of Council's financial position and performance to budget for the period ending 30 April 2022. The key focus of the report is to detail key variances to budget and highlight additional information of interest to Council. The report is divided into 6 key components, being the 3 financial statements on the performance of the core council operations, analysis of the capital works program, the business unit results, and a summary of procurement activities which include local buy information. The Statement of Comprehensive Income provided at Attachment 1 details income and expenses reported during the period. The April result was an operating surplus of 1.6 million, reported against a budgeted deficit of 3.39 million, and a favourable variance of approximately 5 mil. The year-to-date net result, including capital, is a surplus of 15.4 million against a budgeted surplus of 3.7 million, a favourable variance of 1.7 million. Oh, wrong number, sorry, 1.7. The key variances are due to the following. Revenue is higher than budget by 5.7 million, mostly due to an increase in the prepayment of the financial assistance grant from 50% to 75%. This is offset by lower than budgeted revenue due to the timing of works under the Roads Maintenance Performance Contract Program of 3.3 million. Operating expenses exceed budget by approximately 814,000. This is due to additional maintenance costs for water and utilities of 2 million, timing of materials and services expenditure for external works and roads and streets of approximately 2.3 million, timing of expenditure for trade services, fleet, parks and external plant hire of 1.8 million, internal plant and fleet usage being lower than budget by 1.2 million, and increases in overtime and allowances for the RPC program of approximately 633,000, which is offset by additional revenue. This offset is underspent by an underspend in materials and services of 2.8 million due to timing and savings in materials and services of 2.8 million and savings in employee benefits of 1.9 million across the organisation. The capital program actual expenditure to 30 April 2022 is 39.8 million against a full year budget of 65 million, representing a year-to-date spend of approximately 61% and approximately 6.9 million below the budgeted cash flow for the period. This is due to the timing of delivery and progress claims. When commitments are included, the capital spend increases to 46.7 million and represents a 90% spend on the total budget. Council's cash position as at 30 April is 97.4 million and trade and other receivables are at 16.9 million. Also presented are the operating and income expenses for the 4 business units. The airport unit has recorded an actual operating surplus of 1.25 million against a budgeted surplus of 925,000, an improved position of approximately 327,000. This is due to higher than expected revenue, which is being adjusted at BR4. Operating expenses are lower than budget due to timing. The sale yard unit has recorded an actual operating deficit of 48,000 against a budgeted deficit of 67,000, a favourable variance of approximately 19,000, which is due to additional revenue, which will be adjusted for at BR4. The waste unit has recorded an actual operating surplus of 1.2 million against a budgeted surplus of 976,000, a better than expected result of 259,000. This is due to additional revenue from refuge, disposal and waste levy fees. The water unit has recorded an actual operating deficit of 49,000 against a budgeted surplus of 1.1 million, an unfavourable variance of approximately 1.15 million. This is largely due to additional expenditure in materials and services due to higher maintenance costs of approximately $2 million, offset by decreases in employee benefits and internal plant hire. Local buy statistics for the period ending 30 April record a year-to-date local spend of 55.5 million. This represents 46% of Council's total spend. That concludes the presentation of the April Finance Report. Happy to take any questions relating to the information provided today. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. Did I just notice, before I go to questions from councillors, on your traffic light system, you've allowed one small red dot to appear in the middle there, which is around abnormal expenses, and it says for COVID-19. So is that somewhere along the line you've calculated, I guess you'd say, the expenditure accorded to sort of COVID-19 effects, or is that what is that line item, I guess, for interest?
Through the Chair, it generally relates to cleaning costs, so additional cost incurred due to COVID activities to keep the workplace safe.
Okay, so things we've identified as extra costs that we've obviously incurred since that.
So we code those separately so that we can report on them.
All right, thank you very much, Vicky. Councillor Roll.
Thanks, Mayor. Vicky, the financial assistance grant payment received, so it's earlier than budgeted, but is it a larger amount of a first payment of a smaller amount that we are proposed to get in the next 12 months?
Yes, it is. So we have the decrease due to the change in methodology of approximately 10%, which affects 22-23 payment, of which normally 50% is prepaid in the year before, but they've also changed that approach and made a prepayment of 75% of next year's reduced amount.
So that will cause a change in our future budgeting as well?
Correct. So we've accounted for that in the budget for a more conservative figure so that we can cover both the basis of the 75% prepayment continuing, but also ensuring that we have enough, the right amount in the budget so that we're not producing less revenue than what's budgeted.
Thank you.
So just further to Councillor Roll's question, so 8.446 million is 75% of next year's figure, is that correct?
Sorry, just could you point me to where that 8.4 is?
Yeah, where you referred to the operating revenue being higher.
This one? Yes, correct.
So so I'll just have to reference that. So 8.446 is 75% of next year's adjusted figure.
Correct.
Right,
Through the Chair, if you recall in the briefing paper, that was estimated at approximately between 10 and 11 million.
Yep.
And noting that that figure is not finalised, it'll be finalised once the outcomes of the GST pool is known.
All right, thank you very much. All right, Councillor Moriarty.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for all the amazing detail. But just two questions. What was the total budget for 21-22 for council? Our total budget was...
Just trying to find the exact number as it's recorded.
We had a surplus of...
Could I just clarify the question through the Chair? The total budget amount or the total budgeted surplus?
Well, it was both, but if we, just working on the surplus, if that's easier.
And sorry, through the chair, and I'm assuming when you want the surplus, you want the original or you want the current?
Yeah, the
position?
original. I just want to.
One moment.
Is it
Sorry.
two something?
Would it be possible to take that on notice and provide it back?
Yeah, so I'm assuming, Vicky, there that obviously we don't have the full budget presented in a monthly financial report. You'll only have the comparisons.
That's
That
correct.
year to date. Yeah, sorry. So, Councillor Moriarty, that won't be the full budget, won't be appearing, I guess, in a monthly financial report. So, Vicky, you say you might bring that back.
Oh, okay. Anyway, I was just going to ask, as at the 30th of April, what our balance was. That was also, I could work out where we're up to.
So I'll just clarify the question. You'd like to know the current position at 30 April
Yeah.
against the original budgeted
Yeah.
position.
Well, that is.
So I think we had a budget of 24, whatever it was, and a deficit of such and such. And I was just wondering how we were tracking, that was all.
That's the original budget.
But if we can only track that every quarter, then
Through the
so
chair,
be
I
it, I
can
guess.
provide that. I just will need some time to find the numbers for you, so I
thank
can
you.
report.
Sorry,
back.
I just thought you'd know better than I would.
Sorry.
Thank
no.
you.
All right. Any other questions? I think in a simple term, Councillor Moriarty, if it helps, and I'm not suggesting I'm the person here eminently qualified to do that, but the variation year-to-date budget on page 182, sorry? Sorry, that's the, sorry, cancel that, Councillor Moriarty. I'm not the preeminent person that's going to tell you this. But yeah, no, I'll leave it to Vicky. Any other questions?
Just need 5 minutes.
All right. All right, Councillor, so well, the recommendation there is that obviously that we receive the monthly financial report. I'll just go to the actual wording here. So we adopt the monthly financial report for the period ended 30 April 2022. Is someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Rolfe, seconded by Councillor Carpenter. Rolfe and Carpenter, thank you, Marnie. It's been moved and seconded. Councillors, all in favour? Against? Thank you. Carried. All right, councillors, the next item is 12.2.4. Now, CEO has actually noted her actual conflict in relation to this matter, so she will leave the room for the purpose of this discussion. Whilst this was actually previously presented to a workshop by former CEO of CHDC Argent Bloomer, I think the responsibility falls today in terms of, I suppose, the adopted process that we wanted to have, that this actually was brought to a council meeting for a resolution. So I guess, and there might be some discussion about that process as well. So I'll hand over to you, General Manager of Corporate. Margaret, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Hayes. Good morning again, councillors. This report before you seeks endorsement from our Central Highlands Regional Council for funding for the Central Highlands Development Corporation through the Office of the Chief Executive Officer. For clarification, before I hand over to Vicky to take us through some aspects of the report, the CEO of Central Highlands Regional Council, Sharon Houlihan, has had no involvement in the development of the CHDC budget other than seeking to understand the information that was provided to her. I'll hand over to Vicky to take us through the report. Thank you.
Thank you, GM Gatt. Good morning, councillors. Through the chair, I present a brief seeking endorsement of the proposed funding for Central Highlands Development Corporation in Council's 22-23 budget under the Office of the CEO. Central Highlands Development Corporation is the lead economic development organisation for the Central Highlands regions, and its operational costs are funded by Council through the Office of the CEO. The proposed amount for funding in the 22-23 budget is $2.219 million, comparing to funding approved in 21-22 of $1.935. The Development Corporation have advised the funding will allow for increased advocacy and stakeholder engagement, improve visitor experience to grow the visitor economy, build regional intelligence and collateral, attract, retain and develop our talent in the region, derive and accelerate strategic initiatives and major projects, increase the quality, impacts and outcomes of Development Corporation events, provide data and insights for well-informed decision-making and measuring of success. A summary of Development Corporation's budget is included at Attachment 1. Council's endorsement of the proposed funding amount of $2.219 million is sought. The endorsement of this request will provide the amount to be included in Council's 22-23 budget development and allows Development Corporation to continue and/or extend existing contractual arrangements or enter into new arrangements and comply with its directors' duties under the Corporation Act. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Vicky. And as councillors, you would appreciate that as I said, the presentation of this and the detail in it certainly doesn't have the benefit of an officer from CHDC to present it to the meeting. And can I say, as a mechanism, that's not necessarily the case. This is just consideration. And this is probably a new process. It's tended to be captured, I think, if General Manager Marg, I think in the past, if you can just clarify or correct me on any of this, I mean, the funding bid, I guess, in terms of the Development Corporation being functionally run by a one-member contribution and its own initiatives in terms of funding or partnerships, it usually came through the Office of the CEO and then was presented as part of the budget in some way, shape or form. So there's never been, over time, a mechanism where the consideration of a couple of things here, and I'm not sure exactly what it is. This is actually called a budget endorsement today. So I guess in terms of our conversation or our deliberations around this, it may not be about the fact that we as a council actually have traditionally funded our economic development through this organisation, and that as a related party that's been, I guess, a well-documented relationship. But in terms of the fact that it's changed and grown, in terms of the materiality to council, it's changed substantively as well. Previously, it wasn't considered material even on our financial statements, that we presented that separately. So that's now changed. So not that it isn't an important consideration by council any time about their funding prerogative, I guess, in terms of economic development. It's about the fact that the materiality now actually makes it substantive enough that this is probably the first time that this has been the mechanism by which we consider this. I can't say that we wouldn't want to consider aspects of the justification of councillors either supporting or not supporting the agenda item today, but I think in some of our previous discussions we've talked about perhaps the opportunity of looking at the alternative generally for the development, or sorry, the delivery of economic development can be through the council mechanism, or it can be obviously external in an organisation such as CHDC. Another complication to that is, of course, I suppose you'd say the model that the Development Corporation is in terms of it's not a member organisation where, if for instance, and this is not to dilute this conversation, a company like TSB, the Toowoomba Surat Basin Enterprise Group, it's a membership group, so Toowoomba Council only contributes one part of the membership, and then obviously members that are actually signed up to that organisation pay the rest. What that does do, though, is that functionally then makes TSB not exclusively a development corporation for its council. It actually delivers for all of those members of which council is a member. This model is Central Highlands Development Corporation is functionally to deliver economic development in its forms, as is tourism and a lot of other special projects. And that's the way, I guess, it's grown to the point where the materiality is now something that should be and should be reviewed. The constitution of that corporation, I speak from the position of chair of that organisation, has been extended, so there are now independent members of that board. So, you know, there is probably a longer and other review process that perhaps should be looked at, but I guess you'd say in the short term, for its functionality. The deliberation we have today is obviously the budget for that corporation for the coming year. It's been a budget that has been presented in some detail, but I think it was key that we actually had the extra information around the increase, so the increases to the actual CHDC budget and the request by CHDC for council to include obviously some contingency perhaps in some additional money, and that's been around the Central Highlands Economic Master Plan, which is a pretty key document and was recognised through that corporate planning process. It formed part of, I guess you'd say, the economic aspect of that corporate plan. And then obviously there's a couple of things relating to tourism that were actually included in there, and the council's contribution to the RTO. Now that's a bit fluid because, as you can appreciate, the state government has embarked on quite an informal process regarding RTOs. We are currently in the Southern Great Barrier Reef, and I think there is a proposal that we join what will become Queensland country as an RTO. So there is some, I suppose, it's pretty significant, but probably one-off costs that might be coming in the next financial year. So I think there's some reference to those in there. So look, I think from councillors, just to guide, I guess, perhaps the discussion today, myself as a director of CHDC and the Deputy Mayor as a Director of CHDC, happy to answer some questions, but I guess in terms of this process, this is Council's consideration of your membership to that organisation. So within the parameters of that, I guess we can probably guide our questions around there. So it's just, I suppose, rightful to sort of acknowledge that we won't deal with perhaps all of the interest in the related party relationship going forward, but it will be more about the operational part of this budgeting. So hopefully that's provided some sort of background to what we're discussing. So Councillor Cypher.
Oh, thank you. Well, as councillors, we're responsible for the ratepayers' money, and the money that is handed over to CHDC to run our economic development portfolio is ratepayers' money. And I do not feel that an increase in their budget of $183,000 is justified with the amount of information I get back from CHDC. Now, I do believe that there could be an advantage to have an information centre in Capella and the Gemfields, but I do not understand what discussions there has been about that, how that would roll out. For me to be committing ratepayers' money into something that I'm not fully aware of, I couldn't justify that. I looked at their financials, and CHDC does have significant money in their for cash in their accounts. A membership, which the Mayor pointed out that we're a one membership body of CHDC. A membership is an X amount of money, yet each year this organisation keeps coming back with cap in hand asking for additional funds. A number of their staff are project-based and are funded through other grant bodies, so all the cash in their bank has been subsidised by external funding, and my understanding why it sits outside council, and it was established like that many years ago, the advantage of having the ability to get external funding. Yet external funding will become probably less and less. So how much money are we going to continue to keep subsidising this organisation? I know our own organisation, which is ratepayers' money, internally we could do with additional staff to ease the burden of our own departments. Some of our staff from my looking through the window, are extremely stressed and overburdened with a workload because we don't put into our own budget additional positions to ease the burden internally. So that amount of money could actually be better used within our own organisation to run the core business of council and do what our ratepayers really expect us to do. I think CHDC has to become more sustainable. Recently, the board sacked the CEO, so that is red lights immediately for me. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Right. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Moriarty.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. I just was wondering, I just wanted to clarify that CHDC, Central Highlands Development Corporation, is a non-for-profit organisation, isn't it? Has it got charity status or?
No.
Just a non-for-profit.
It's incorporated
Yep.
as a company. So yeah.
Yeah, and
Not a not-for-profit.
It would be a non-for-profit though.
No, a company limited by guarantee, so it's not technically.
You can be a company limited by guarantee and a non-for-profit.
Yeah, but I don't think it's a not-for-profit.
Yeah.
Not-for-profit status. There was in any of the charters there wouldn't have been a requirement for it to be not-for-profit. Yeah.
And non-for-profit means that the income is not distributed back to your board directors or the organisation. So
No.
if it's not doing that, to me it looks like a non-for-profit. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Well, I think in terms of its corporation definition, it's not-for-profit, but I guess by functionality, it obviously regenerates its own income.
And it's where the profits go.
Yep.
If people in the organisation aren't benefiting from it, as in those that are responsible for the income, which you're not. So, but anyway, happy to debate that at another stage. But I just wanted to clarify, Mr. Mayor. I know that we keep talking about the service level agreement we have that council has with CHDC. So that service level agreement, obviously, you know, for continuity, so that there's a certain amount of money coming in each year, as I think you were saying, and Councillor Cypher, that it's changed, and rather than having a set amount of money each year with a set of KPIs that are reported back on, and there's an X amount of dollars paid each year, that obviously is changing. So, so I just need to say that if that's changed, then I think that we're negligible, really, negligent, I should say, because we should be just saying there's X amount of dollars and these are the KPIs, and then if there's anything over and above that, sorry. But I also want to ask, so the last year when we were involved, CHDC received an extra $300 to their $300,000 to the budget, and then on top of that, this year there's a request for another $183,000 odd dollars. So where's the baseline? So this is what I'm saying. If you've got your baseline, it would be your service level agreement, what you've agreed to work with, to give that organisation to report back on the KPIs that they've met. So I just don't understand, is it going to keep accumulating each year? Because if that $300,000 that was extra last year, and then that's another on top of that this year. So that's almost $500,000 in 2 years. So I just am a bit perplexed.
I can answer some of the questions. So,
Thank you.
So I guess in terms of the service level agreement, that's there to protect, I guess you'd say,
Yeah.
council against the concept of the organisation delivering economic development more broadly, and it is qualified to a certain extent, but it's actually in this process, and I was careful to sort of, I guess, talk about what this process allows you to do. This allows council to invest in the organisation that actually then delivers the project. So in effect, when you start talking about benchmarking or I guess, the sorts of projects that they might deliver from one year to the next, that can change, but that's determined by the corporation. So it says, well, we're going to, in terms of our role and our sort of, I guess you'd say, remit to actually be reflective of economic development in all its forms, including some social and wellness development, it's not exclusive, then it actually proposes that back to council. The concern that happened about 3 or 4 years ago, and this is the sensible investment of council's money, ratepayers' money, into the organisation, is making sure in terms of accountability and reliability and the materiality, is you had an organisation that had a budget where we were contributing 600,000, 800,000, and we're delivering a budget of, say, $2.2 million, which was where you got other funding. So in terms of risk, and I suppose that discussion between the organisation that delivers your economic development and council that wants it, was the risk that perhaps they wouldn't be able to deliver those things without increasing the membership. So whilst that mightn't have been the actual term of the conversation, that the reality is we need to make sure that our investment in economic development in the corporation was reflective of making sure there was no risk to the services we were currently getting, and obviously the ability to do more. So a simple assessment of the mechanism is we can decide as a council how much money we're prepared to invest in that corporation functionally set up to deliver it in whatever shape or form. So when you say 300,000 or this year, last year, another 183,000, as long as you believe that you're getting the value for that, that's a decision you can make. It's not, if you don't give this to CHDC, we could do another project in another part of council or we could employ other people. That's another decision. This is about the membership of your corporation to deliver the sorts of things. The difficulty always is cart and horse. If the corporation is responding to, I guess you'd say, community development sort of, I suppose, activity, they can bring it back to council and say, hey, we're delivering a lot of this stuff and it's costing more, or we want a service or extra services that are actually going to cost more. So I suppose in a real purest sense, you'd say, as a board of CHDC, we need to increase the membership this year, the fee. So we know it's a little bit more intricate than that because we require through our service level agreement the detail. So there's nothing that CHDC does in terms of its detail that council doesn't know about. I suppose the difficulty will always be at what point, say this is the first time that we've got to this mechanism. If it was council's decision not to fund CHDC, well then you can appreciate there would be quite an interesting conversation we would have to have as a board about then how we do that, and vice versa. If we were extravagantly requiring our membership to go up, then there's a sensible process that says council should counteract that. I suppose it's easy for someone to say, let's divorce the two processes and say, as long as there's a good business arrangement between the two organisations, which we've tried to do, and as the board of CHDC will say, we need to keep our customer happy, and the customer is the Central Highlands Development Corporation. Now, to my knowledge, in the time that I've been the chair there has not been any concern from our council about what we deliver at Development Corporation for what the membership pays. So I guess we would probably, as a development corporation, be recognised as probably one of the preeminent organisations in the state of Queensland. So you talk about probably Townsville Enterprise, TISBE, and our organisation is probably considered the same in terms of its effectiveness. You know, they have a they have a bigger social media presence than our council does. I guess it's those sorts of things. Where we, I suppose, get into topical discussions is when we talk about the alternative, you know, when some councils decide to have economic development internally and some externally. And you would say that most small councils probably do it for practical reasons internally. Most councils that are probably a bit more innovative and have capacity do it externally. So I guess without necessarily focusing on that particular you know, alternative consideration, the reality is I would rather it be seen as it's an effective organisation. It delivers, you know, in my view, it delivers in spades, and if it means from time to time we change the personnel over there, and it's changed lots over 25 years, we can do that from time to time and still obviously make sure that we deliver the right things for the region. So the mechanism for the increases there, and that's the reason why there's the extra, I suppose you'd say, the extra funding that was requested was about tourism, you know, in one part about the visitor information centres. Now, in terms of detail, we did discuss that. Obviously, last year we did it with Jaringa, help me here, Christine, Jaringa, Blackwater and Springshaw. So obviously that arrangement and those that process, I think seemed to be pretty successful, and obviously the discussion was to extend it to Capella and the Gemfields to give a more complete service. Now, I don't know exactly what the detail of that usually is. That's an operational part of the organisation, but it is obviously to give a presence at those places to give a more complete visitor experience. So I can only answer those questions like that. I mean, and obviously the substantive information that's been provided there in the bid. But look, it certainly, I have to say that it's not presented on the basis of you can either give it to us or it can be used somewhere else. That can be what we can consider here. But the reality is you're either deciding that that's a valuable investment you want to make or it's not. And I guess because this is a new mechanism, the thing would be if you don't agree or you only provide part thereof, well, that's probably a consideration then their board has to make, I guess, about then what they do and don't deliver, I guess, in their service level agreement back to council.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. As you quite rightly said, this is the first time that we've done this process and bringing the financials to a council meeting. So obviously it's going to be our first time having this debate. But again, it's not up to whether I think that the organisation delivers value or what anybody thinks. It's what they can prove. So it's about having a service level agreement, X amount of dollars, these are the KPIs we've delivered on, then we know we've got, we can make up our minds whether it's quality for service or money. And it's the ratepayers that we have to be asking questions about. And you're quite right. A lot of councils either have their economic development inside council or outside council, and as you quite rightly refer to Townsville, then there's Rockhampton, there's Gladstone, there's a whole range of councils that, you know, there's sort of trends come in, go out. I think the trend more broadly, from what my observations are, is going out. But when we talk about, thank you for giving the financials, which the reason why I asked about the non-for-profit really too was because I thought that the other financials might have been available perhaps through the ACNC. But anyway, just to note that it says here on page 21 of the audit that in the financial year 2020, the contribution from CHRC or council was $1,199 and $885, and then it went up to $1,821,361. So there was a jump there of approximately 700,000, and then we were asked another 300, and now on top of that another almost 200, and then looking at the financials, that CHDC do have still quite a bit in their cash, their current assets, their cash and cash equivalents. So, but coming back to exactly what you were quite rightly bringing us back to, Mr Mayor, was what the additional money for CHDC this year, the $183,383,000, $375. $90,000 is, as you say, for the visitor information centres. I was just wondering, how much did each of the other individual information centres cost?
The same. They're actually, there's the centres at the $150,000, so they're actually $50,000 per centre to 18 months ago, and this cost is actually a little bit of a saving. So it's actually they were $50,000 annual, and now these are 45.
Right.
So, yep.
And the other one, I just was wanting to know about the extra $10,000 to fund CHDC directors' expenses to increase the opportunities to leverage the CHDC directors to provide advocacy for our region and CHDC representation. I was just wondering what the current amount is. Is it, I've just been looking at the financials, it's a little bit probably spread there, but I was just wondering, is that you have no money there for the directors, or this is 10,000 extra?
You'll have to turn your microphone off to get an answer, Janice, because I was just going to say Councillor Rolfe was going to respond probably to that last one. So if we can start there, go back to the 90,000.
Yep, so last, 2 years ago, there was pilot, it's a pilot fund, to have coordinators, part-time coordinators for the visitor information centres in Jaringa, Blackwater and Springshaw. They were very successful as a pilot, and so they have gone on to, again, part-time coordination within those visitor information centres. And the reason for the $90,000 is, as the Mayor says, it was a slight saving on, they found a slight saving on the pilot, and so they've asked for a pilot to happen in Capella and the Gemfields for the visitor information centres. A lot of it's to do with the fact that we have a reducing number of volunteers to run those visitor information centres, and it has added that professional, reliable attendance at the visitor information centres. To my mind, it's been a great, it was a great pilot, and it really works, and it'd be good to do the pilot again in those two places. Mayor, do you want to comment about the $10,000?
No, well, I was just going to say the $10,000 is, I suppose, as an analogy, that would be the same as in our budgets underneath the CEO's office. You would have members' fees, which is obviously to allow us to attend conferences and other things to literally, I suppose, leverage this board, so it can actually, I guess you'd say, do its advocacy work. This is about utilising those for those independent directors like the former Deputy Premier Paul Lucas, Kieron Hallinan, and using them who obviously attend as independent directors to allow them to actually attend some more events where they're actually advocating for the Development Corporation and or economic development. So you're right though to reference the fact that, and I'll go back to the point that when you look back on those audited fees, they have increased quantifiably. As I said, it even goes back past $1.1 million. But those audited fees will only show the membership fee. The actual budget of the organisation was significantly higher, but based on the risk of, obviously, other sponsorship and or in-kind support that it attracted. So in a kind of a way, in terms of trying to compare audited figures with audited figures, they're not quite the same. And obviously the decision for the membership fee to change was based on that risk, to making sure, well, instead of actually having to wait to get that additional funding, we're actually saying those things are important and they should be funded. So that's why the fee tended to cover that. So in terms of the cash, I would argue that any cash position is only one of timing. Most of those funds are obviously committed to things, and obviously if there has been savings in either what's been delivered, there would be a component of cash at some residual point where you liquidated everything that would be potentially a spot there, but it certainly would not be, it'd be a matter of timing that some of those things are there. So I don't want the implication to be that this is an organisation that's flush with cash, because any of the projects or any of the activities are actually budgeted against, I guess you'd say, there being functionally an opportunity perhaps to perform better, maybe to have those extra funds like any project, but certainly not on the basis of it being a revenue-raising opportunity. So, but did you want to add anything else, Councillor Rolfe?
Yes, I do, Mayor, please. So I don't really understand the increase in the $35,000, considering we have had an about changing our RTO. So I think that one could be basically left off for the time being. And I also, within this document, I do, there's on page 199, there's the additional funding through the recent partnership with Grant Guru. CHDC will have an improved insight and available funding. Well, that hasn't come to us yet as a board, I don't believe. So I don't consider that we need to be considering increases in any funding for those sorts of areas. Although it's not included in here, Mayor, but
No.
This document is written as though they've got, new income streams. Well, one of them, the camping and campground management, that hasn't either gone through a board. It hasn't even gone through the CHRC. So there's some things here that I feel that we probably don't need to include, and I would, for mine, I'd rather go for just the pilot for the coordinators for the Visitor Information Centre. Thank you.
Yep. So just so you understand that, some of the amounts there that Councillor Rolfe is talking about are requests for council to include in its budget, not a budget bid for CHDC. But in terms of the $183,000, you're saying, Councillor Rolfe, happy with the pilot fund, but not necessarily the other costs. So there'd be $93,000 of that 183 that you could consider maybe not required. So that's a view. Let's just clock that down. So sorry, Councillor Syfe, you've been waiting patiently.
You're right. No, thank you. And I'm actually was going to raise what Councillor Rolfe raised. Their initial request was $2,118,375 of ratepayers' money. But on top of that, it was additional that we gave suggested to put in our budget, $101,255, which really was going to be handed over to them anyhow. So it was on top of the 2 million, etc. So yes, I get a bit funny about when they do work. We give them over $2 million, or they're suggesting this year over $2 million, yet anything they do on our behalf, we've got to pay additional for it.
Yeah, and that's a fair observation. That's a fair observation.
Yeah, and that is something that really gets under my skin, because if they are going to drive our tourism, then they should be doing, we shouldn't have to pay them on top of what we pay the tourism officer. We're already paying his pay. We shouldn't then have to pay him to write a strategy that we've got to rewrite. So that's the sort of stuff that really gets under my skin. I totally agree with Councillor Roth. The $90,000 for the tourist information centres, but that is the only increase that I will support on their previous budget allocation of 183,000, etc. So all that other stuff, and this, what they're suggesting goes into our budget, it should be coming out of the budget that we give them. The one-off budget we give them should cover all of that. So I think we just need a lot more transparency for the communities. It's their money, it's the ratepayers' money, and there needs to be transparency.
And that's why it's in your council agenda today. And like the council is a member of the RTO, it's not CHDC.
Exactly. So why do we give it to them? Why don't we just pay that ourselves?
No, you don't. You actually just pay it. The reason why there was some confusion is because the Central Highlands Development Corporation is actually delivering the tourism for Central Highlands Regional Council. That's in your SLA. The membership is actually the way the government's got the RTO set up.
Well, I was told by your friend who just left, was that yes, we're the members. I've always noticed you've got to be a council to be a member of it. No, well, but it came out of the budget that we provided them.
No, council always just paid it. Council was the member.
Do you confirm that?
I can speak to that. Happy? So that historically has been in the community's budget, and that was paid out of the community's budget.
And that was one of those things where, to be quite honest with you, it's a case of, and this is why some of these budget changes, and it's not inappropriate for us to raise them, it's the proper thing to do, but it was previously budgeted in council departments like communities, and they went across there because they actually, you know, not necessarily that fun, but these sorts of things could have been so that you can say, look, CHDC, you can be the member now, and you paid out of your budget. Well, all that's going to come back is the budget for CHDC is going to come back and say the funding is provided in it. So that's why there's always going to be a catch-up, and I've said this a few times, about what you would have seen at audited figures and where we are, because it's functionally changed. So we are running a concurrent discussion here between not necessarily getting value for your investment, but making sure that you're actually being told what is the value proposition. And I get that's why we've been. This budget bit is the first time that we literally do get to actually provide a level of detail so that council are considering those sorts of things. And there are some things in there like the CH Economic Master Plan. Well, council did pay for that.
Yes, so that's my next question. They're just
highlighting the fact that it's coming up again for renewal. It's a 5-year plan, it's a 30-year plan, but it's reviewed every 5 years. So, and it's sensible to do that. But obviously, Central Highlands Regional Council paid for that. So, what you're saying, Councillor Cypher, is good in that saying, right, well, if you're going to do that in the future, put it in your budget so that when we come back and have this discussion, all we're talking about is our membership with you, and all of what you deliver is in your fee. So, and the SLA investigates that and provides that transparency you're talking about, so people can see it. So, I'm sorry, Councillor Moriarty.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I absolutely disagree that I can't make comparisons with one year to the other and mixing up what might be grant or cash amounts, because it's all listed here. The grants received from CHRC, other revenue, registration, project contributions, project reimbursements, electricity, fuel, office rent, advertising, travel. So it's all here, very transparent. And the other thing I would like to say to you, and we've all done budgets, I believe that the things that you've asked additional for council to put in our budgets to transfer, which is Council's membership contribution to the tourism organisation CAP Enterprise, when in 2020 it's got there for subscriptions, membership fees and sponsorship, $61,000 odd. And the only reason why we're having in CHDC, like the only reason why we're having this conversation is because the transparency isn't there. The service level agreement is not spelt out exactly what council's paying for, what we pay for, what they pay for, and it's all neatly clear. And these are the KPIs. Because the other thing is that what I want to know is, why are you asking for another 200, like we've just agreed? No, we're going to probably not fund all of that, but why are we asking for another almost $200,000 on top of the $300,000 that was asked for extra last year? So it's cumulative. I just think it'd be fantastic to be running a budget where you can just keep asking for money and it just keeps going on one on top of the other each year. And I just would like to refer to a comment that Councillor Cypher just made before. And mind you, I would also like to say that the reports that we've been getting in the last 12 months or so from CHDC have been excellent, I might add. So we are understanding what the organisation's doing. I'm not saying that they don't offer value for money. It's just that it's not in a transparent way to be able to evaluate that objectively, not subjectively.
And that goes back to, and the inference wasn't that you couldn't compare, but what I'm saying is that the figures you have don't actually account for all of the activities of CHDC previously, as a change up to the fact that they are now, rather than being funded on an ad hoc basis, there needed to be a catch-up. And then it also included things like the agribusiness officer and a few other, they were actually added in as a recurrent, I suppose, increase to the membership. So it was always climbing. The actual membership fee was always climbing. The difference being, and I don't resolve from the fact in terms of transparency, is that it was always a budget bid through the CEO's office, and that always then was never about the actual a submitted budget from the organisation versus some of those defrayed costs that were part of the communities. Some of the CEO's actual budget itself actually covered some of those costs. So there's never been a time, except for probably in the last 18 months, where the materiality now says that as an organisation providing the service, all of your costs have got to be now provided in this one bid. And here we are at this point. So I'm not commenting on your ability to question or compare the things, but I can honestly say to you, you won't be comparing apples with apples. The increases won't look like they're relevant or benchmarked off something that didn't exist 3 years ago, because this budget process at the time was a real catch-up. LBF used to fund, obviously, and still does fund the business manager, the business services. There's a whole heap of in-kind things which are now captured more, I suppose you should say. But the reality was, in the past, it was always like the decision-making process was about, look, we don't have the budget for that in our membership fee, but does council want that service? And some of those things were kind of added in. So you're absolutely right. It's been a changing feast, but in terms of the related entities legislation that happened 2 years ago, has made the scrutiny even more dramatic. So it's obviously got to be that key separation, and into now it's the catch-up of sort of saying, right, well, to make sure that if what you see over here and the services it's delivering in those SLAs is good, then obviously this is the cost of, and that's what we're deliberating today. And I'm quite happy to hear councillors' views on the things that can and can't be included, but I need to say the rider always is, in terms of the transparency's always been there, but it's actually been within the organisation. The budget's actually been a budget bid to the CEO's office. it is now going to be getting the level of scrutiny that we're exercising today.
And thank you, Mr Mayor, but we wouldn't be having this conversation if it was all laid out. This is our budget, this is what we're asking for, and this is how it links to our service level and our KPIs.
Well, that's what I'm saying, it normally wouldn't have come to here because it went, as I just said,
but
it came
it's
as a budget
good
bid
that it has,
through the
thank you,
CEO
Mr.
office.
Mayor.
So, no, it's a point that needs to be made. We're not sitting down here not considering it because it's never been brought to here before. It was a budget bid to the CEO's office, all laid out, the same as it's laid out this year, but it didn't get to be brought to this council.
I've got a copy of where it's all laid out, but it's not laid out in that much detail that we're talking about today. But just to finish off what I was saying before, with significant changes that are happening at CHDC, I really think I'd like to concur with Councillor Cypher that it's probably time to have a review and look at opportunities. Look, as a council, we're just watching every dollar. We're making decisions and how are we doing more with less. I think it's very timely when you're looking at an organisation that has got almost $2 million in the bank, and they're coming and asking for all this extra. There needs to be some reviews, I think, Mr Mayor, and I think that I would like to put that straight to the CHDC board. Thank you.
Well, it's something that council can request of CHDC, and that can be done through a process. And I mean, as will this decision today be a consideration of all councils to decide whether they contribute this money or not. So, you know, we can have our opinions about it. I guess the thing is, as long as we understand we're talking about the same things, and the opportunity of reviewing CEO will, the CHDC will and can be a separate process if that's what council wants to do.
Thank you. It's not about opinions, it's about facts, so thank you.
All right. Councillor Burns. Sorry, you've been patient too, mate. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Cypher somewhat. It is starting to blow out a bit, but especially after the last few weeks of that camping report and then the CEO being let go, and I think it does need to be reviewed or looked at, and I also think that a lot of these problems are other councillors not understanding, but so there should be a turnover, I think, with the council members every few years for the actual membership. So that'd be my point.
Yeah, well, and I guess, you know, they're all fair things, but I guess you have an organisation or a corporation that's whose its constitution doesn't allow for that. It was, you know, and admittedly it was 25, or it's 25 years old this year. It talks about obviously the members being just council members, and they can be, and we usually decide that at the start of the term. But in terms of the mixture of independent directors now, that's why we changed the constitution to allow, I guess you'd say, that external participation in that. But I guess in terms of asking it for review, I guess you've got to respect the formality of the fact that it will be council requesting or wanting to do that in the first place, review its arrangements with Central Highlands Development Corporation, and obviously if they're doing what the Charter basically says, if it's looking after its customer, well, obviously they're prepared to, you know, and I can only say this on the basis of sharing that responsibility, they can respond to that accordingly. So thanks, Councillor Burns. Well, Councillor Cypher.
No,
Yeah.
I think Joe wanted something more to say.
I'll let you talk.
Oh, no, you talk before me. You talk before me. You
No, I was just saying the council members on the board need to be turned over more regularly.
Yeah, well, the Constitution allows, therefore, to be the position of chair is always with the Mayor,
Yeah.
and the CEO. So I guess that there's only going to be one spot that technically under the current constitution allows you to do that. So that's something that'd have to be discussed at some point in time.
Yeah, I think we have to discuss that because it needs to be turned over because
Yeah.
after the current few weeks and that, and the current climate economically around the nation, really, I think I can no longer support this as a budget item because
Well, I guess,
we're not a member.
as in, sorry?
Other councillors are not a member of this board.
Yep. Well, I guess that's what you've got to do. If that's that'll be the consideration you'll have to make at this meeting today. Is that if you don't support the budget, well, fundamentally the organisation then doesn't have a budget, and then obviously the implications are what it'll have to consider. So go, Councillor.
Mr Mayor, I'd just like to suggest an amendment to the resolution to reduce the budget from what they've suggested.
Well, I think in order in terms of that, I think Councillor Rolfe has already unofficially indicated that she'd like to have it changed from certainly the increase of 183,375 to be adjusted to only the 90,000 component of that, which was for the regional visitor information centres, and then obviously deleting the 10,000 for the director's expenses. Have you got those?
But they've already got that, so. No. They've already received that, haven't they?
So the original amount. So you've got 2,118,375, and if you take off 93,375, you should have your amount. Is that correct?
Yeah, but then were we also taking off $5,000 for the additional membership?
Yes.
No. That's a request that CHDC's asked for council to consider in their budget. That's not in their budget.
Yes, but when we add those two figures...
When you add them all together.
Which one's the two
No,
figures?
that's on top of.
In the attachment,
That 101,000 is on top of.
CHRC funded operating costs 2,118,375 plus 101,255.
Yeah. Just let me go to that. So, sorry, say again, Marnie.
2,118,375
Yes, 375.
plus the 101,255 equals the 2,219,630. That's in the recommendation.
Yeah. Sorry. So that was, well, I guess it's effectively asking for it to be included in the CHRC budget. It's actually not requested in the CHDC budget.
So Mr Mayor, I hadn't finished speaking when you
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah,
had cut me
Councillor
off. So, as we don't know what's included in what they've requested, in that, so they haven't already got showing in their budget 46,255 for the master plan. Have they already got this included in their budget? Because I haven't seen a breakdown of their request. So are they double dipping by suggesting we put that in our budget? Well, obviously the RTO, we're paying that, they're not paying it, but I was told they were paying it.
And I guess
the
thing
marketing, advertising, 15,000. Have they already got a budget line for marketing in their budget, and they're going to ask us for another 15,000 on top of what's in the 2 million? Like, where's the breakdown of their budget and what they're requesting?
No, well, it's not so much what they're requesting is 2.118,375.
Yeah, so what's the breakdown? What have they got in there?
And
what are they asking for that?
Well, it's in the bigger document that was submitted.
Yeah,
I don't know what this.
I'm with Joe now. I'm totally confused, and I feel that we are not very clear about what we're doing here because...
Well, it's not because it hasn't been provided. The 2,118, that budget submission was provided at the workshop, so that's been documented. So the extra figures there are figures that are recommended that council actually budget for. Is that correct? I'm reading that right?
That is correct.
Yeah.
And through the...
So it's not part of the CHDC. But I want to make this absolutely clear because it's the 2,118,375 is the budget submission, and these are the extra costs. So that's been made quite clear. Yep. And the $90,000 for the pilot fund, that was at our strategic and briefing forum in February, so it's been provided. So there's a lot of information being provided here, so I don't want it to be convenient we've forgotten about them or we're not getting them right. So.
Through the chair, Councillor Seifert, please forgive my
No, you're right.
memory loss here. Were you at the...
No, I wasn't.
You weren't at that workshop where Arden presented the detail surrounding the budget?
No.
Councillor Moriarty, were you at that workshop?
I remember lots of things from that discussion.
Right. Okay.
Right.
And if that helps any further, Mr Mayor, Councillor Seifert, there, if you do jump into the hub, there will be that information.
Yeah, I've
Yeah,
read the
thank you.
document, I just wasn't at
Okay.
the...
I agree.
Right.
I just there is
Yeah,
some
I've read the
level of
document.
information.
All right. So that's the figure there that I think, Councillor Rolfe, we were talking
But
about,
what is the
2022,
figure?
which is the reduction of the
What's
two,
it- can
the
you
director's
read it out?
expenses.
Just read the figure out for me, please.
2,025,000.
Oh, yeah, you can.
Bloody hell.
2,025,000, which is...
Well, that's more than what they initially asked for. It was
Oh, no, it-
2,118,000 before.
Yeah, but and you've taken 83,000 off it, is that correct?
Well, if you're taking 83,000 off 2,118,000, it must be less than, or you've added on 90,000.
Councillor Seifert, through the chair. So my understanding of the discussions that we've just had is in the report proper, which is page 199,
Yeah, that's the one I'm on.
233. We're keeping the $90,000 and we're removing the $10,000 and the 83,375. So that actually equates to approximately 93,375. And then, but the actual recommendation talks about the total budget. So the total budget is not just our funding, our contribution as a member, but also considering the CHDC request for us to add that additional 101 into our budget. That's how the recommendation is written.
God, I can't believe this.
So
Freaking can't
it's
believe
the 101's got to be completely ignored if that's the case, because that was only ever a request for council to fund in its
Okay,
budget.
so we need to change the...
But it's still money for them.
No, it doesn't. It's not. It's no, but
We have a service agreement. You know what the base level is. If it's 1,600,000 a year, you know that's, everything's over and above that.
$101,000. Oh, just for clarity, the $101,255 is for the RTO subscription, of which council is a member. The tourism marketing and advertising, $15,000. And then the renewal of the Central Highland Economic Master Plan. They are discretionary items that council can decide to include or not. So you don't have to pay to be in the RDO if you don't want to be. The tourism and marketing, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. That's a discretion that council will have in its budget position, I guess, and I'm not sure whether they've been included or not.
So could
And
I
then the-
Delay on the table.
So
we clarify this.
got that 35,000 that you obviously said you paid previously. You got that in your budget to pay?
It's in the office of the CEO.
Yeah.
Through the mayor.
Budgeted for that, it's already in the budget. We paid that, not them.
So that's right. It's budgeted in council's budget. So
Just to be very transparent there, so it historically was budgeted in community's budget. It is now budgeted in the CEO budget.
So it's in CHRC's budget somewhere.
That is correct.
Through the chair, in the draft budget, Councillor Seifert, not yet adopted.
So as I'm saying, the council has the discretion of leaving those expenditures out if you don't
Yes.
want to do that. So,
Yes.
so that's
So have we
it.
budgeted any money for the marketing and advertising strategy? We have.
Yes. Those three items, Councillor.
Are we paying for that ourselves or are we handing that over to CHDC? Have we learned our lesson there?
Historically, that is, there would be a request and that would be paid to CHDC.
And same with the renewal of the master plan, we hand that over to them as well.
It would be, because there would be, that work would be undertaken by someone within CHDC.
Well, it's a KPMG document. So I mean, you can choose to have them do it, and then whether it comes from council, whether it comes from them, it doesn't matter.
You have to see the
That goes out into their budget over and above, this is what I was saying before, it's
Yep.
additional money into their budget, over and above what they've requested in the budget.
No, because it's there for, it's there for a decision. If you don't want to do it, you don't pay it. So that's council's discretion.
But we've got no say. It's the board of CHDC that looks after their own budget.
Central Highlands Economic Master Plan is a document that was created conjointly between council and CHDC a long time ago, 5 years ago. And if you don't want to contribute to it now, then CHDC would have to decide to do it themselves, or council can agree to contribute it if they think it's worthwhile investing in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All this stuff, I haven't seen too much good stuff coming out of there in their strategies, etc. So I would strongly be suggesting we don't get them to do any more of our work.
Well, you know, this is the thing. We'll get a chance to decide whether that's what we're going to do when we vote on it. So
And we have a
I guess
review.
if council don't want to do that work, that's council's decision. And
Get another consultant to do it.
well, the KPMG did the first one, so it's not something that council or CHDC could do. So you know, the thing is, it's probably one of the most important documents we've had. So you've got to decide. You can't chuck these things in and out because they are strategically important and have a high value. So if you don't want to support them, then you can tell people that you don't need them or you don't have a value
So
for
we
them. You don't
shouldn't be
accord them
having
a
this
value.
conversation if we were professional. Can I?
So I guess that I want to get back to this council.
Who's
We've got to
speaking
resolve
next?
this.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Who's speaking next? Sorry.
Well, I guess I have the discretion of actually getting to the point of actually getting the vote going, so we can actually do that. If we're happy enough, I'd like to work through those costs and those figures. If people are happy enough with to put this to a motion to a vote, to obviously
No, but CHDC had a surplus of $300,000 in 2021. Came and asked us for extra $300,000. I'd like to know how their budget's tracking at the moment, given that we've been referred back to a conversation we had the other day. Has CHDC, or are they looking like they are going to expend their entire budget for last year?
well,
This financial year. We've only got 2 months to go.
I guess the short answer to that, Councillor Moriarty, is no one here can answer that, except you can ask the CHDC board if they're actually going to do that. So I guess the reality is...
Okay, whoever I need to ask, have
Well,
you got money still in your budget unspent
well, you
for this
can
year?
ask them in that process if you want to actually get that information, and that's generally provided in the SLAs and certainly, you know, the operational plan that they often share with us. So I guess that's something that can be picked up from there. But I guess in terms of this discussion today, it won't be about whether they've spent it last year or whether they haven't. It'll be a case of whether you want to invest in this membership fee or not. And I guess that's where we need to get to today.
Oh,
All right. So who's
no, this
Councillor
is
Rolfe?
so embarrassing. How unprofessional.
Well, can you turn your microphone off, Councillor Moriarty, because there's another speaker. So, Councillor Rolfe.
Thank you.
Sorry, go.
Sharon?
Yep.
So the request from CHDC for the 22-23 budget is $2.18 million. Now, if you leave out, forget about the increase that is asking for the... Are you quite finished? I'd like to speak, please.
Point of... Sorry? That's fine. Just keep going, Councillor Rolfe.
So if you in this procedure here, if we leave out the $40,000 for the RTO, the advertising and marketing of $15,000, and the renewal of the CHEMP of 46, assuming that that is quite feasibly done underneath the budget request of $2.118 million, I am then asking for a reduction, only the $90,000 for the pilot be the request.
Yep.
So that is take away $93,375 out of the increase of 183,375. So you've got, and I'm a bit like Gay here, I can't really read all of that.
$2,025,000, just a touch over $2 million.
Yes,
$2 million and 25.
Yep.
Right. Well, look, councillors, that's the proposal at this stage. So I guess subject to obviously a mover and a seconder, we'll obviously move forward on that one. So you happy to move that, Councillor Roll? Right, it's been moved by Councillor Roll, seconded. I'm happy to second it as the chair. I can. So seconded by me. All in favour? Against? Wow. So that's 4-3. Is that right? Yep. Yep. So that is not acceptable. Right. So the budget that is lost. All right. Right. Next item, councillors.
Through the chair, we've just got the answer, Councillor Moriarty, to the monthly finance report of what was the original adopted budget, and then what the comparison is for 30th of April. If we could just finish that one off.
Fabulous,
Okay.
thank you.
Sorry, Mr Mayor.
No, that's fine.
Sharon.
Thank you. Through the chair. The total budget originally adopted for 21-22 was a capital program of 60 million and an operational program of 162 million. The original surplus amount that was budgeted is 2.3 million.
So sorry, the total then was?
Total capital is 60 million.
No, together.
And operational, and
Please.
total is 222.1 million. The original forecasted surplus is 2.3 million. That compares to the 30 April position of a surplus of 1.6 million. Just noting that it is not necessarily comparable, the original budget to the current actual budget at the lower level, because many things have gone in and out from the first time, but we could certainly provide a comparative at financial statement level, if that's helpful.
Thank you very much.
Can that be emailed, please?
Yes,
Because
sure.
the motion has already been done. That information
Yep.
is no longer relevant to that discussion. Can it be emailed, please?
Certainly.
So I think as a matter of urgency, I think I'll have to move a motion that if council has not got budget for the, we will have to move a motion that that there is no budget for the Central Highlands Development Corporation for this year. So I think as a procedure that will have to be notified, because they would have significant activities obviously, and the employment of that whole team. I think we respectfully need to advise them that's the case. So.
Mr Mayor, if I can just add, maybe through Vicky and Margaret on very short notice, what would the latest to progress from a budget perspective that you'd need to know what that figure would be? Just for guidance.
My understanding from Mr Mayor is that the entirety of the budget wasn't approved. Is that my understanding, or is it just the reductions?
No, the entire budget was
Yep.
You lost the entire budget.
So you've got the funding for CHDC is effectively terminated by this resolution. So the resolution must be that we must give formal notice to Central Highlands Development Corporation that they no longer receive budget for council for the delivery of those services.
No,
So through the chair, could I suggest what needs to happen is that my take on the whole discussion was we weren't happy with the amount. I would be suggesting very promptly that CHDC revise their request and come back to council with a revised requested budget and have a discussion with councillors as to what their grievances are.
Well, that's not what the
detailed
resolution
budget.
says.
The resolution, I see what you're trying to do, because that's declined the budget.
Yep.
How do we?
That is, it's declined. So
I see why you're
if that stands, I have an urgent request that obviously council needs. Yeah, because we will have to advise them there is no budget for this year. Well, I guess it's not necessarily, that's not our decision, that's the board's decision. But if there's no budget for this financial year, the fiduciary responsibility that we will have, and I apologise, if this is conflicting you, then we would have to advise CHDC there is no budget for this year, and they'll have to obviously take whatever course of action they need to take.
I couldn't follow what you were trying to say before, sorry.
Yep.
Why what you were trying to achieve.
Yep.
There was also a couple of other things there, Mr Mayor. We also asked, requested that there be a review done as well.
Yep.
Okay, fair enough. Or whether there's another resolution for a review.
Mayor, with your leave,
Speak up,
an
Sharon.
alternative motion can be put though
Yeah, if there's
by any councillor.
Yes. Well, there might have to be, because I guess under this resolution,
They're not going to run out of money.
the obligation would be to tell the
for 12
organisation
months.
that there is no funding for it. So,
Just
from
a quick question. How many people will be unemployed because of this?
I think it's 14.
14.
Yeah. All right. So I think I'm just trying to think the simple resolution will be from council is to advise Central Highlands Development Corporation that the Central Highlands advise the Central Highlands Development Corporation that the budget submission for 22-23 is not approved.
Well, Mayor, I think that's just that the motion was defeated, and then the action can follow from that about what the impacts are. That you don't need a separate motion for that. It's just that the motion was put and the motion was defeated. Yeah. So the action that will follow, it will follow, but you don't need to have a separate resolution to say that.
For council, it's not for them to it's for council to how we deliver our economic development.
Yeah, and that might be the subsequent action that's required. So if the Development Corporation decides that it can't obviously operate, then it will have to, it'll be for council's review then what it does. So I'm just mindful that, I guess in terms of the courtesy to them, to obviously let them know as soon as possible of this, because clearly the security of that organisation is now pretty much at risk.
So the motion was defeated, and then the
Yes.
action from here will have to be determined.
Yes.
That's all.
Yep.
For the council meeting, it's just that the motion was defeated.
Defeated, yeah. Yep. All right. All right. Next agenda item, councillors, customer and commercial services. So that's all I'm looking at. Land acquisition, is that correct? Thank you. And that's that actually comes under obviously Michelle's hand, and she's obviously not here today. So I guess in terms of making sure that someone actually delivers that, Andrea Hewitt is here to talk about this. So do I just go straight to you, Andrea? You're happy to do that? And I think the General Manager of Infrastructure was happy to maybe provide some conversation there as well. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Mr
Andrea?
Mayor. Good morning, councillors. This report is in relation to the acquisition of land associated with the water treatment plant at Dingo to address some tenure issues that have been identified. So the water treatment plant is currently located on a community purpose reserve for camping and water associated with stock routes. It is an inconsistent use, so we need to address that issue. I will hand over to our Property and Leasing Officer, Rhiannon Maguire, to speak to the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Good afternoon, councillors. As Andrea has already said, this report identifies that the Dingo water treatment plant is located on a reserve for community purposes, which is inconsistent with the use. So this impacts council as we have a new water filtration device arriving, and also it restricts council to apply for future funding. There are two options to rectify this, as detailed in the report. Option 1 is to acquire the land in freehold. Option 2 is to purchase the land and have it included in the adjoining reserve. Both options include addressing native title, and the approximate costs are detailed within the report. These costs do include native title, surveying and the land acquisition. As detailed in the report also, there is a potential encroachment of part of the water treatment plant onto the adjoining land, which is owned by Telstra. So this will be confirmed by survey and then rectified if required. We will be undertaking community consultation and via Have Your Say, and if time permits, we will discuss at a CRG. We are recommending that we proceed with option 1. This will give council more control over the land in the future, and this is reflected in the recommendation, and also does include the encroachment issue if it is found to be an encroachment through surveying. Councillors, I'm happy to take on any questions if there are any.
All right. Jason, do you want to add into that in terms of practicalities or otherwise?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll just add, obviously, the water treatment plant has been in that location for a number of years, and as part of the due diligence that the property team has been assisting us with for the recent funding application, this was identified. I think it's a good opportunity for us to tidy up the tenure.
All right. Questions? Councillor Moriarty.
Okay. Thank you very much. Did I just hear that you're going to do the Have Your Say online, and then a CRG if it falls in the time period? I would like to say that I think at a minimum you probably should maybe even just call a specific meeting for the community. There's not many people always, I know that's generalising, but the Have Your Say is for people online. I just know a few communities, and it's often good to do that face-to-face thing. You probably already have, I don't know, but I just think that it's probably, it's good to keep people up to date and do a couple of different things to meet with people, and probably pick a time that probably suits the community where you might get a few people, or just do a bit of a door knock around, or go to a couple of key places like the post office and whatever. But anyway, that's just me.
Yep.
And some of those sporting groups are very proactive with
And thank you, Councillor Moriarty. We will take that on board. We'll have a chat with Suzanne as well as the best process to go forward. And we do have to do these consultations with all these community purpose reserves because it is part of the process for applications. So we try and do as much as we can, but because this is it is a short time frame that we're trying to get this turned around, it may not be the most best option, I guess. So we'll work that out with Connected Communities. Thank you.
I'm happy to move, Mr.
Just a quick
Councillor Remilcard.
Quick question. The pipeline that comes over from the creek, it comes over from the north. Does that also need to be included or not?
Yes, through the chair, the pipeline is already on a local government reserve, so we can do whatever we need to on that. So we'll incorporate that pipeline anyway, just so that it's a very small kind of reserve. So we're going to extend that out. That's that white line up on that map there. So we're taking in that plus some additional space, and I believe that's a road, incorporates a road as well.
Yeah, not the pipeline from the water storages up to the treatment plant. It goes from the water storages north to Charleville Creek, I think, from memory.
Okay.
There's a pipeline that comes across there which is used to water harvest from Charleville Creek.
Okay, we will have to have a look into it. This is the information provided me by the Water Utilities team to the acquisitions, so...
Thank you, Councillor. I am of the understanding that it is within an existing easement, but we'll double check that as part of this application.
I'm sure there's probably a few local people that can help you.
Janice, sorry, keep going. All right. Councillors, any other questions? All good? Well, that recommendation is there to approve to progress the acquisition of that land. Is someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Cypher, seconded. Councillor Burns, all in favour? Against? Thank you, councillors. Carried. Thank you, Andrea. That's a big day out, Rhiannon, too. All right, councillors, where we go? All right, 12.4 is infrastructure and utilities under General Manager Jason. This is the endorsement of projects for Bridges Renewal Program and the Heavy Vehicle Safety and Productivity Program. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The report today that brings to you a recommendation to submit a funding application for 3 projects, being Black Boy Creek Bridge Replacement, Fork Lagoons Bridge Replacement and Buckland Road Range Crossing Seal. This is under the Australian Government initiative of the Bridge Renewal Program and the Heavy Vehicle Safety and Productivity Program. So these 2 funding programs have been historically separate funding programs. However, they've been included as a joint funding program for $760 million over 10 years. There's an ongoing commitment of $85 million per year $10 million between 2015-16 and 2024-25, with an ongoing commitment of $85 million per year for the 25-26 financial years. Council have identified 3 potential projects for this funding application, and if successful, giving it that we're a rural council, regional council, we're eligible for up to 80% of the funding application fee, of funding application grant. So there's 3 projects which have been identified as mentioned. The last 2 remaining timber bridges within our shire on our network, being Black Boy Creek Bridge Replacement on Withersfield Road and the Fork Lagoons Timber Bridge on Fork Lagoons Road, each being proposed for a $3 million funding application, and Buckland Road Range Crossing under the Heavy Vehicle Safety Productivity Program for a $2 million project. Council undertook a multi-criteria analysis on these projects, and that's presented here within the report to outline the benefit of these submissions. If successful, these projects would be included in the 23-24 capital budget for delivery, with some minor design work continuing in the 22 and 23. It is a requirement of this funding grant that the projects not be within our current capital program, and that is consistent with these projects. Happy to take any questions, councillors.
On yesterday when we were discussing this, in terms of the number of projects, we're happy with all of these projects being included in the program?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. So through the chair, yesterday in the strategic briefing, we did discuss that the ranking was on the multi-criteria analysis, that the Buckland Road Range Crossing came out with the highest score, and equal scores were resulted for the 2 timber bridge replacements. Given that the Black Boy Creek bridge replacement on Withersfield Road is currently in design, it would be the project that is most mature. And if councillors were comfortable, an alternative resolution would be to remove Fork Lagoons from the funding application, given that we have not commenced design for that project yet.
Yeah. Go, Councillor Rolfe, yeah.
So, Jason, on top of the dot point on top of page 216, include funding requests for eligible pre-construction activities. So you're saying that the first 2, sorry, which one hasn't got? So have they all got pre-construction activities?
Through the chair, so the Black Boy Creek bridge replacement on Withersfield Road is currently in preliminary design, so
Yes.
there's further design required
Yep.
for that project. Fork Lagoons timber bridge replacement, we have not commenced any design
Yes, so-
on that project. And the Buckland Road range crossing, we are currently in concept design and consulting with the community as to what that would look like.
So and then it goes on further to say that pre-construction costs will have up to 36 months to complete delivery. Then does it go to the construction in that? So because that's 3 years. So how's it work? How long have we got to actually finish the projects?
Yeah, through the chair, 36 months is including delivery, so complete the
Right,
project,
okay.
which is why the recommendation has suggested that it be included in
So it's not all going to happen, doesn't all have to happen this year, next year sort of thing, does it?
No. And, the funding the majority of the funds would be included in 23-24 if successful.
Thank you.
All right. Councillors happy? Any other questions? Well, I think the alternative Jason's offered is if you wanted to, because there's been no pre-design on Fork Lagoons, that one could be left out if councillors wanted to. So,
I'll do the right thing. I suppose, like, you're putting 3 projects into the one grant round. Would you maybe have more success if you only did put the 2 in? That's how I often think of it. Yeah.
Through the chair, quite possibly, councillor. It is a bit of an unknown. It is a lot of work to do funding applications,
That's right.
so there is benefit in council resources focusing on 2 rather than 3
Yeah, do
projects.
quality applications for 2 rather than 3 rushed ones. So I'd like to propose that we put in the 2, was it Fork Lagoons that isn't?
delete Fork Lagoons. Yeah.
Delete Fork Lagoons and put in the 2.
Yeah, given that the fund is only 85 million a
Yeah.
year, that might be a more focused
Yeah,
opportunity.
I think that would be
Yep.
a lot better focus.
All right, if councillor's happy to do that, we make that recommendation. So the recommendation would read that we approve the following projects. The first one, obviously, under the Bridges Renewal Program would be Black Boy Creek Bridge Replacement. Delete the Fork Lagoons Timber Bridge Replacement out of that columnised opportunity there. And then the Buckland Road Range Crossing Seal is the Heavy Vehicle and Productivity Program nomination. So happy with those? All right, so there's 2 of those in there. So councillors, someone happy to move those? Moved by Councillor Cypher, second to Councillor Brimblecombe. All in favour? Against? Thanks, councillors. Carried. Thank you, Jason. Right. All right, CEO, I think it's over to you. 12.5, which is the Local Government Association of Queensland Civic Leaders Summit, which is, where this year? Sunshine Coast.
That's right. Thanks, Mayor.
Nominally Sunshine Coast, I think, at the moment. Sun hasn't shined there for about 3 months. Yeah.
So The Local Government Association of Queensland Civic Leaders Summit is coming up, as the Mayor says, on the Sunshine Coast this year. It happens every 2 years, although the last face-to-face event due to COVID, I think, was in 2018. So the summit brings together mayors and deputy mayors and chief executive officers, and it's the only forum of its kind. It's on the 29th to the 30th of June this year, and the recommendation is that Council be represented at that summit by the Mayor, Deputy Mayor and accompanied by the Chief Executive Officer.
All right. Well, that's a bit harsh. It's only one Mayor and Deputy Mayor and CEO, so they've got a bit of a vested interest. Councillors, it is what it is. Happy with that? All right, so the recommendation is that we be represented at the Local Government Association of Queensland Civic Leaders Summit on those dates, 29th, 30th of June. You happy with that, Deputy Mayor? Yeah, okay. All right, you happy with that, CEO? You'll have to be. All right, someone happy to move? Thanks. Councillor Burns moved. Councillor Carpenter seconded. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Carried. Marnie, that's, I think, all our open agenda today, isn't it? That's correct.
Yes, Mr.
Councillors, now out into our technology team, we'll need to move to go into closed session. So can someone move that we go into closed session, please? Moved by Councillor Moriarty, seconded Councillor Carpenter. All in favour? Carried. All right, okay. Well, look, councillors, welcome back. Welcome back to our executive leadership team. Our closed session item today referred to the formal confirmation of the appointment of our CEO, Sharon Houlihan, and I guess in terms of the recommendation today, it's the report of the CEO's 6-month performance review, and obviously the competency and better than competency overall outcome achieved there, and to formally confirm the appointment of Sharon as our CEO. And I guess at this juncture, on behalf of all of our communities, it's our great pleasure to make this recommendation to councils for their consideration. So can I have someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Roll, seconded Councillor Carpenter. All in favour? Against? Thank you, councillors. That's what you want, a unanimous resolution. So well done, CEO. And certainly in this forum, I guess, on behalf of our community, I guess they all want to make sure our councillors are doing their work. They want to make sure the organisation's doing their work, and clearly as the leader of that organisation, they want to make sure that you're doing your work, and they want to know that they've got someone that's obviously competent and doing that job. So congratulations. Welcome. And I suppose, you know, we haven't done this, a welcome to our community that sort of says you are now officially our CEO, not the new CEO, you are the CEO that's rightfully at the head of our organisation. So congratulations.
Thank you very much, Mayor and councillors.
Yep. All right, councillors, general business. Go on, Councillor Rolfe.
So to the live streamers here in anybody in Blackwater watching, I've got to extend my apology for the rest of the afternoon and this evening. I can't be here, so through your mayor, I'll say thank you for the meeting today, and I will go and get ready for Springshaw Show. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rolfe. And I think you should say that, Councillor Rolfe, I mean, you have an executive position at the Show Society and in the region more broadly, so we know it's show time and you need to get to that. So, any other general business? Oh, Councillor Moriarty.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to acknowledge that it's National Reconciliation Week from the 27th of May till the 3rd of June. And this year the theme is Be Brave, Make Change. So I'm very happy to say that on Friday there'll be elders and traditional owners and council, state government and local people gathering to be sharing stories and connecting the community to move us all forward in reconciliation. So I just wanted to highlight National Reconciliation Week. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Right, thank you, Councillor Moriarty. Any others? All right, there being any more, I'll declare the meeting